What's that? Yeah, probably. Everything will go wrong because we're waiting on it. Calling this meeting to order of the Issaquah School Board. Today is October 9th and it is 6:30 p.m. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We will begin with public comment. Wanted to note my always first thing is that public comment is really public input and there's not any output, which can feel very dissatisfying, but we are listening. If you see us with our heads down, we will be taking notes. Board meetings are open to the public. So that is why we're here, but it is the board doing its business in public. Public comment is an opportunity for the board to receive public statements on items not listed on the meeting agenda for possible board action. If you have a point of view for specific agenda items, first review of levy proposal and monitoring report for operational expectation 2, I'll ask you to hold your comment until that particular agenda item. Public comment is not intended to raise an issue unique to a particular student, staff member, or administrator. Rather, it's your time to provide your insights on issues more generally and of wider concern. As a general rule, the board will not respond to public comment. I ask you begin your comments by clearly stating your name and your attendance area. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes. We will be using a timer. The board neither endorses nor censors any opinions expressed during public comment. Please keep your comment civil and respectful and avoid personal attacks on others. We are here trying to demonstrate civility to our students. So that is our hope that you would do that. In place of applause, you can acknowledge a speaker by lifting your hands and waving in motion. And we will start public comment with those in the room and then goes to those with who have their hands raised on Zoom. So I will begin with Shannon Mayo.
Hi, is this thing on? Okay, good. Hi, my name is Shannon Mayo. Hello, Superintendent Tauyuk and school board members and student representatives. This is my colleague Jennifer Jones, treasurer. We're both with Endeavor PTSA, and I'm here today to speak on behalf of our board, some of who are also watching from home. We recognize that the recent lawsuit involving our school is a legal matter, and we firmly believe that all parties deserve a fair and unbiased process. We also want to acknowledge that our experience with all, and I want to underline all here, the Endeavor staff has been consistently positive. However, we are deeply concerned how the situation is being managed, specifically the role of Executive Director of Elementary, Susan Mendel. Because she's named in the lawsuit for allegedly failing to act on concerns of potential danger for students and staff. But despite this, she continues to have served as the primary liaison for staff and families, attending Endeavor events, attending faculty meetings, and also sending communications to our families. From a human resources and organizational best practice standpoint, we find it inappropriate for someone named in a complaint to oversee the response. This creates a conflict of interest and undermines trust. It has sent a message that serious concerns may not be taken seriously, and that unfortunately is now and in the future, if the person responsible for addressing them is the same individual who allegedly did not act previously. We urge the district to reconsider this approach, both in this case and moving forward. Our staff deserve to feel safe, heard, and supported so they can focus on what matters most, our students. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, I have Courtney Beatty.
Hi, I'm Courtney Beatty. I have been a Skyline teacher for 23 years, and I also am a parent. I have a junior at Skyline, and I have a 7th grader at Pine Lake. And I'm here to express concerns over OE 14 and specifically around comments and discussions around college credit-bearing classes at Skyline. The mission of our school district states that our students will be prepared for and eager to accept the academic, occupational, personal, and practical challenges of life in a dynamic global environment. That is our job as educators, making sure students are prepared for the next step, not fixated on bringing that next step into the high school. Kids put enough pressure on themselves and each other, and I don't believe that adults need to be constantly telling them that they need to be doing more. I also believe that the narrative that Skyline's IB program, which I have taught for 11 years, is some type of disadvantage to our students academically or economically compared to other schools in this district is actually problematic. I believe this statement is disingenuous. Every student in this entire district has access to Running Start in order to curb college costs. Every student in this district has access to AP classes through the district online program if they want them. Every student in this district can take any AP exam that they want to take to earn college credits without taking the course. Only Skyline students have the access to IB classes, exams, and diploma, and the superior academic preparation for college they provide. Skyline students are not at a disadvantage going to college. Lastly, despite I don't think this should matter, I think there needs to be an acknowledgement of what we have done to act on OE 14. Every student in the junior class at Skyline is now taking an IB class. We can offer that because there are standard level IB classes. We also have multiple AP classes, which I'm well aware of because my student who is a junior, who is my daughter, was forced into one. She didn't sign up for it, but had to take it.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Jones. I am the father of 2 Endeavor students. I want to begin by thanking you, the board, for your swift response and the concerns raised 2 weeks ago regarding the litigation involving Issaquah School District and the allegations of sexual harassment, retaliation, and negligent supervision tied to an employee at Endeavor Elementary. I return tonight because I and many other parents remain deeply concerned. The district's handling of these allegations have felt inadequate and dismissive. The district email that was sent to families stated there was no credible evidence to warrant an investigation. That email, however, was sent by an employee named in the lawsuit, an undeniable conflict of interest. Even more troubling, public records show that the district was already aware of the behaviors outlined in the lawsuit, directly contradicting what was shared with families. See the handout that I have given you. I have 3 requests tonight. Number 1, engage a third-party investigation to determine the validity of the claims. Number 2, appoint an individual to manage the district's response to these allegations who is not named in the lawsuit to avoid conflicts of interest and ensure integrity. Number 3, outline what support is currently being offered to Endeavor staff. What is the district planning to do to ensure the staff have reasonable outlets to share their experience and feedback anonymously? Parents who have emailed the district have received templated responses which state, "We are monitoring the situation closely." How? Your own policy states that the district will promptly investigate allegations regardless of legal proceedings and will take appropriate steps to promptly end harassment, eliminate hostile work environments, prevent recurrence, and protect against retaliation. By not issuing a notice of investigation, the district undermines this commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lisa Hudson.
Hi, thank you. My name is Lisa Hodson. I have 2 students currently at Endeavor Elementary. Very similar to what's been said. At the last board meeting, I raised concerns regarding a lawsuit filed by a former staff member against ISD. The very next day, families finally did receive an email from the district staff from a district staff member who herself is named in the lawsuit. assuring us that the matter was strictly legal, that no formal complaint had been filed, and that there was no evidence of harm or to students or staff. Yet, this statement contradicts the student's own policy, which requires investigations of both formal and informal complaints. Shortly after, we became aware of an internal email, part of public record, sent by the same district staff member to the individual accused in the lawsuit. This email, dated 2 years ago, summarized anonymous staff complaints that mirror nearly every concern parents are raising today: fear of retaliation, bullying, staff and students being yelled at, and even inappropriate touching. This directly contradicts the district's assurance that there had been no evidence of harm to staff or students. The evidence existed, was documented, and was acknowledged by the very same administrator who now denies it. Meanwhile, dozens of parent emails that have been sent voicing these concerns, the only responses received have been a generic copy and pasted statement that the situation is being monitored closely. How exactly? What does that monitoring consist of? Please tell us. Where is the evidence of action? At this point, I am demanding and desperate that the district initiate a third-party investigation. Only an independent review can provide teachers and staff with a safe space to share their experiences without fear of retaliation. If the district is truly monitoring the situation closely, then tangible actions and documented results should already exist, and they do not. So I ask again, what specifically has been done to monitor this situation? Why has a third-party investigation not yet been initiated? How many more concerns have gone unreported because of the culture of fear and retaliation at Endeavor? Families deserve transparency, teachers deserve safety, students deserve protection. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Next is Molly Peterson.
Good evening. I'm Molly Peterson, co-chair of Skyline High School's Humanities Department. First, thank you for all the hard work you do on behalf of all students of ISD. I'm here to share my perspective on the report out from the board members regarding the work study on OE14 that took place on at the board meeting on September 25th. The discussion appeared to lack nuance regarding the IB program at Skyline, IB's operating model, the benefits to students, the breadth of options available to students, including this year's expansion that added IB language and literature standard level. Furthermore, the word equity was being used in the discussion, but what was being described was not equity, but rather sameness. The board appears to be prioritizing a goal of having the same number of college credit courses at all high schools above other crucial program and teaching and learning considerations. The district has chosen to provide options for students, including high schools modeled on both AP and IB offerings. It is important to acknowledge that having two programs will create difference, and this difference leads to good things. It is possible for the district to support wonderful learning experiences that amply prepare students for college under both systems. We should be looking at ways to develop each of these unique systems to be the best they can be and not getting distracted with a search for sameness that ultimately undermines the hard work being done at each high school. The district is investing in excellent teaching and learning through the IB program. As a teacher myself, who is part of the expansion of the IB Lang and Lit offerings at Skyline, I can tell you that I'm energized. Teaching IB makes me a better teacher. It provides better opportunities for all of my students. Please extend an invitation to teachers like me for your next work study on this topic. I'm asking that your actions and discussions reflect an understanding of the input provided by teachers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, I have Sandy from Pine Lake.
I've come here tonight to ask the board administration to reflect on its anti-democratic authoritarian behavior. Every parent that spoke at the last school board meeting highlighted the stonewalling and lack of transparency and communication of two different investigations in the district. And in the prior board meeting, we witnessed you dismiss students and prohibit them from giving public comment twice. You literally silenced them. FERPA protects students' identities and even allows them to opt out of school directories. Your silencing of two students who wish to remain anonymous due to the very real threats of doxing and targeted harassment exemplifies that you have absolutely no concern for their students' safety, privacy, and listening to the very students you purportedly serve. This isn't shocking given the racist record of the district where Black students are disproportionately suspended and report experiencing more harassment by staff than their non-Black peers. However, as it has been demonstrated, this board not only silences students, but stonewalls parents on their grave concerns and inquiries that range from inadequate substitute teaching of AP level Spanish to the steps being taken to safeguard elementary school-aged children after revelations of sexual abuse within their children's school. I have to ask, who do you actually serve when you're sitting up there in that dais? The students who were silenced give the following statement. The suspension of Ms. Early sets a harmful precedent of free speech in the district. Expressing opinions on current events should not be shut down just because they don't match your own views. Censoring a teacher like this goes directly against her rights. Recently at Mountain Middle School, a similar situation occurred where a student was reported for expressing support for Palestine. The excuse for this repression is anti-Semitism is entirely ridiculous given that nearly 30 children die every day in Gaza in the most horrific ways and conditions, and over 1,000 teachers have been slaughtered while the schools and universities themselves are often intentional targets of Israeli attacks. By preventing discussion on this ongoing genocide, you are killing them a second time. In closing, it is completely abhorrent that students were refused the right to speak, especially on the issue of freedom of speech. You are not exemplifying to students democracy, but
Thank you.
rather authoritarianism.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you. Next, I have Bridget Chapeau.
I'm Bridget Chappett, parent of 2 current Endeavor students, and I want to discuss the district's email from September 26th. It stated that the district didn't identify any immediate safety concerns and that the district is monitoring the situation at Endeavor. But the message didn't give any details on what measures are in place or how any impact on student safety is being assessed while the separate legal process unfolds. I've read through all the regulations and procedures that the message linked to. I also reviewed last year's OE3 report and the OE2 report on the agenda tonight. Those documents are all really inconsistent and vague when it comes to actual protective and monitoring measures. I emailed my concerns to the board, but only received an assurance that monitoring is in place. Right now, we're being asked to simply trust that everything is fine, but we're not being told what monitoring actually means, what protocols have changed, and who is ensuring accountability. I can't make an informed decision about whether my children are safe unless this critical safety information is provided. Our community has a credible fear that our teachers are being subjected to harassment, intimidation, and bullying. This directly impacts them and our students. I'm calling for the board to conduct due diligence and ensure accountability exists, and that this is consistent with best practices in public education and workplace safety. Specifically, I'm asking that the school board do 2 things. First, communicate specific monitoring measures that are currently in place at Endeavor and be transparent about the metrics that you're using to assess student safety, staff safety, and disruptions that this situation is causing in the learning environment. Second, launch an investigation into the allegations and safety concerns. Then clearly communicate the scope of the investigation and timeline for completing it to the community. This needs to be independent. Thank you.
Okay, with that, public comment is over, and we will move on to the agenda item. So the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda is a moving management tool that allows the school board, where we're able to pass multiple items in one motion. The consent agenda items have been received by the board prior to this meeting. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda, place it on the regular agenda for discussion.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Seeing no comments, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. We'll move on to the establishment of the regular agenda. Are there any changes to the regular agenda?
There are no changes to the regular agenda.
Okay. Then we will start with item number 1, the board retreat recap. So the board held a retreat on September 29th and 30th. And so this is an opportunity for us to recap a discussion of several hours worth of conversation. Was there anyone that would like to begin? Or I can go by major item and we can talk about that. So we began our conversation about the portrait of a graduate. And we began that by hearing from Representative Tomiko Santos, who is chair of the House Education Committee. So that was a very good conversation to begin with. And did anyone have any discussions about that particular conversation?
Is there any way that that could be broadcast to show what the portrait profile of graduate is? Is that possible or is that too?
The visual?
Yeah, yeah.
So she'll try to pull that up as we begin discussing. So it was a very robust conversation about, and I'll preface it with, we began the work with a profile of a graduate as we're looking at their entire time in our system. And so what do we want a student, the profile of a student as they're leaving us to look like? And so that's kind of why we focused on graduate. Director Coyne, I saw your hand first.
Okay. All right. Well, I thought maybe I would speak to some of the pre-work that we did ahead of that conversation too, while we're waiting to pull up the profile of a graduate. It was interesting. We one of the pieces that we were asked to do was to listen to a podcast on St. Vrain Valley schools in Colorado, which is interesting, kind of thinking about how other districts are doing things that are a bit outside the box. And kind of some similar demographics to the Issaquah School District. And so it was interesting just again to see what they were doing, particularly around workforce pathways, how they were really working to engage the community, which is always something that I find intriguing to listen to in terms of how we can bring the community into the work that we're doing as a district. One area that I thought was really fascinating too was, these workforce pathways, particularly for students who know that they want to pursue a career in education, specifically in teaching. They really start to work with students at the high school level and really think about what that looks through as they move on to college and then continue to keep them involved in school. So it was a really good way, I think, to set the stage for this conversation that we had around profile of a graduate, which will also is also neat too, to talk about the fact that we will incorporate that in our board town halls that we'll be doing here later this month. It'll be a great way for us to kind of start that conversation with the community, share some of the work that, if we're able to get that visual up, that will highlight these particular areas and really hear from all of you. Because I think one of the things that we find in the formality of a board meeting is we can't directly engage with members of the community. So those town halls would be a good opportunity for us to share this work and then really understand where the community is at with the direction that we're looking at as we think about the profile and build this moving forward. So those are my thoughts.
I thought this particular conversation was really great. First of all, it is great to have the opportunity to spend a couple hours to really dive deeply into a topic, but this particular topic about thinking about education and learning in a different way, perhaps for the benefit of all of the kids in our district was really, really interesting. Representative Santos is leading a work group at the state level to kind of think about our state system overall and how we could perhaps think differently about skills that we want our kids to learn. And, the system right now, we also read a book leading into this work session about mastery-based learning, and a whole bunch of other things, but that was part of the discussion. And it's really, acknowledging that our system right now is currently set up in a way for a specific type of learner. And if there are not opportunities for us to think broader in order to acknowledge and grow the aptitudes of all of our kids in different ways and to build skills that employers actually now in a changing world are starting to emphasize, which is more critical thinking, curiosity, letting students take agency in what they're learning and what they're wanting to study, and the skills that they want to build. So I just think that's the direction that the world is going in, and that we would be smart to be thinking the same way. Here is the profile of graduate now up on the screen of some of the skills that we're thinking of. And then,
Yeah, and that's not showing on the Zoom,
oh, it's not showing.
so it does need to get
Oh,
shared.
okay. And really for us then as a board to kind of start thinking about how should our system start being geared towards building more of these opportunities in the curriculum and the offerings that we're making available for our kids and how they learn. So it's a fascinating topic. It's kind of a seismic shift in how we think about education. But it is something that we need to start talking about because it really registers with me anyway, and thinking about making sure, again, that all of our kids, the aptitudes that they have inherently are being emphasized. So those are my thoughts.
Director Gallinger?
So I appreciated all the pre-work because I think I like to be challenged to think. And that's why I appreciate our superintendent and all of the work you did ahead of time with your team to prepare us for it. I unfortunately wasn't there for that discussion because I was doing a college visit. But certainly doing the pre-work made me think about a lot of things, and coming back to be able to then see the work the next day that you guys had done was really fun. And I am really grateful for this. And I think it's interesting when we reflect, like everyone that's sitting up here, we all went the standard pathway of least resistance. And yet I love that we really want to broaden what does success look like? What are the skills that we think that students need to be prepared for jobs that don't even exist today? And I am really excited that there is uniformity and belief across this group that we want to do more for our kids, and we want to give them more choice and more opportunities to demonstrate and pursue passions. So I'm really excited about this, and I hope that we can get some good dialogue in our town halls, because the intent is to sort of let's let the community see and touch this, and students, parents, we want our student representatives at the respective feeder patterns to be there with us so you can be part of those discussions, because I think it'll be really helpful to hear. And I think it will serve as a nice foundation for us as we look ahead with another high school opening.
And I think it was Director Taylor that mentioned we read a book called Mastery. And one of the schools mentioned in that was Issaquah. And I think it was good even from that perspective to look at, at Issaquah, their diploma, their transcript looks completely different because it's based on all of the metrics that you really need. And some of these are around, so where it's quantitative and qualitative assessments, and being able to look at a skills-based mastery of skills. And I think this is good for us to even be able to say, well, holistically as a district, we need to really consider what are the skill sets that we need our graduates to leave, regardless of what path they're taking, whether they're headed to a 4-year college, a 2-year college, going straight into work, going into the armed forces. What are the things that we need all of our students to walk away with to be able to reach their full potential? And I think that these are the ones that really kind of stand out as the ones that we're hearing all throughout various different industries that are needed. So it goes beyond just what grade point average did you get and what school are you going to, that it really gets to how are we ensuring that they're meeting these skill sets that are going to be required. So, and again, yes, you can look, hopefully it's on our website, maybe it's been in the e-news as to when the 3 town halls are occurring. I know that the end of the month in October, the last Monday and Tuesday, but I just can't remember when the third one is.
16th.
The 16th.
Yep.
So that's coming up next week.
Yep.
I promise I'll be there. But yes, so that they're coming quickly, and we really want to get at the heart of what this looks like. And I have to say personally, I'd love to be able to have some of this discussion I can't wait to hear, because this is one of the last things that I'll be walking away from when I leave in December. So this is really important. I did not realize that Representative Tomiko Santos was basically my spirit animal, that we shared so much about wishing if you could break down education, if you could completely do away with how it is structured today, which was structured 100 years ago. If we were rebuilding it from the ground up, what would it look like? And man, I would love to be in some of those discussions with her about what could it truly look like. So it was a great conversation. You can see that our work is actual work, and so this is a product of that. And we're continuing that. We want to hear from the community. This, I think, needs to really be the community's determination of a profile of a graduate, which then leads into the restructuring of our strategic plan at our next adjustment. So I don't know, Superintendent, if you want to talk more.
Great. We had a really robust discussion and we had a lot of time to really step through different phases of that meaning making. I think what was notable for me about Representative Tomiko Santos's work, and it's not a legislative sanctioned, it's sort of her own compilation of multiple people that she's engaged with this topic of reimagining education and thinking that through. She calls it the Big Ideas Committee, or the Big Ideas Work Group. It's kind of exciting to be able to have those kinds of conversations. So it was great because she's been thinking about this for a long time. She had a lot of research and a lot of data about where she had gathered some of her learning backwards of 10, plus years ago. And we got some new resources to think about as well. But these kinds of things are not new either, right? While I feel like it's a newish conversation, we've kind of been building to this in many, many ways since the beginning of Gibson Eck. As we think about where we are now, there's been just an acceleration of lots of factors that kind of put this at the forefront. And I hear students say, hey, this future is a bit uncertain. So how do I really make sure I can adapt to all of that in the future? So that's been exciting for me to think about how we can articulate a lot of the great work that we currently do to tie that and connect that already to these various skills that prepare our young people for a very adaptable future, but also to think about new opportunities that could exist to do that even better. So excited about that work. And I think we'll find when we talk to all of our staff at different levels, they'll have an example. The intentionality that I think many teachers always think about is, how do I get my kids to work together? And they structure their classroom time in that way, whether it's seating in groups at elementary already or other ways. There are some things that we'll be doing in tandem as well, to the point around community engagement. We are going to be doing a student voices project that is going to be led by also our student representatives to sort of get other student voice. The district teams, myself included, will be going to every single school and hosting a staff meeting. It's optional after hours to get as many voices as possible as well. And we're kicking that off in tandem as we're kicking off the board town halls next week. And I did allude to it in the community update that I published this week for October, just to give some preview to that and some invitation, especially to highlight the times and the dates and locations for the board town hall. So excited to be on this journey together.
And before I move to the next topic, I know our students were not able to be there for some reason. They didn't take 2 days off of school to be at our board retreat. But did want to see if there was any thoughts that you wanted to share quickly, and I do mean quickly, about what you see here. I know this is probably a first look, but I don't know if you have any thoughts.
And while they're thinking, my hope is that each one of us as board members would take and do a short video, and this could be the foundation of our videos for the fall of 25 of one of these 5, because I heard they were assigned, and I asked if they could be assigned, not just to talk about the town hall, but for us to do our video on like why it's important, and then share our reflections that we've heard from the 3 town halls. So I think it'd be a great way to bring it back together for the community.
Right. Okay, well, seeing no hands raised from the students, our next topic, because this was not meaty enough, we started talking about homework. Now, we've had conversations around homework that's actually a part of OE 14. It's not just around grading, but it's around homework. We had invited Thomas Gusky many, many years ago to come to our district and work with our teachers along the lines of homework. And so, but that conversation seemed to have not driven anywhere. And so I wanted to bring it back up again to say, you know, this is still work that the district needs to be focused on and talking about. And so this was an opportunity for us to really talk about homework practices for our students. And actually, I'm sorry, it's OE 12 that homework practices are in. We talk about it being consistent across schools, not necessarily including elementary special ed programs and accelerated offerings, but that homework should not be drastically different if you're in pre-calc at Skyline or at Issaquah High. What you're getting for your math, I mean, it should be pretty consistent across the board. Our policies around elementary have been pretty clear that most of the time you're only going to get homework in math. That homework really looking at the number of hours, 1 hour, or what is it, 30 minutes for every year of school. So that, what was that? 10 minutes. 10 minutes for each grade. So that, you know, well, that was not my lived experience because my child did not do his homework during school. So it was all homework. But really taking a look at what our homework policies are, that they're consistent across the schools, and what is homework, why is it given, that it really should be about learning. And so there was just deep discussion, and I don't know if anyone else wants to give their thoughts or impressions. Director Taylor.
Great synopsis. You've pretty much captured it all, but just one point that I thought was really interesting was just the fundamental question, which is what should be the purpose of homework? Why are we asking our kids to do, you know, certain amounts of homework in certain courses, and to think of that in a way that, you know, is maximizing the learning experience? But also, I think we all worry about the burdens on our kids today with all of the things that they have going on. Wanting to make sure that the homework is serving a purpose that isn't necessarily overly adding to that burden, but at the same time, helping their learning experience. That fundamental question I thought was really interesting.
Anyone else? Director Gallinger.
Yeah, so that's actually a really interesting topic for me, especially when you were talking about kind of the uniformity of homework across schools. I was wondering if that was a goal moving forward, how that would kind of be monitored, because I do know that you mentioned pre-calc, a lot of math courses, homework greatly varies between different schools, and even the way that teachers kind of like count homework. A lot of teachers, math teachers in higher level courses don't count homework for actual points, and it's just for the students to do work if they choose to. So how would that kind of work, I think, like with the uniformity piece between schools? Is my question.
One of the things we discussed was having like a repository of great syllabi that teachers could go to. Like, these are the ones that are really showing, giving good explanations about that. So most of the classes are scoped and sequenced so that they hit all of the material. So all of the, if you're in, I will use pre-calc again, that's already scoped and sequenced. And so that's what they should be following. Like, this is the chapter, this is how long you're on there for that chapter. So there should be some similarity between when you're hitting certain topics. And so what kind of homework is related to that should be fairly similar. And I think I had given an example at the work study about in my son's history class, they used to have to write a summary of the chapter, like read the chapter, do a summary. And that teacher was like, is that just busy work? And so they actually let the students not do that. And then came back afterwards and said, well, how did you feel you did on the test without doing the summary? And they're like, please give us the summary. So, but that was a decision that was made, like, okay, here's the usefulness of it. So I think there's some of those discussions as well around the usefulness of homework when it's given. So, Director Gallinger.
So I think that we have spent so many years focused on grading and equitable grading practices. And it's such a big thing to try and align it across for our 6,000 high school students. So I think now we want to dive into the homework part, because homework and grading, for obvious reasons, are like really hard to separate. So I think at this stage, to answer your question, we are more in the early sort of what is the magnitude and boundaries of things before we say, hey, here's we'd really like to really do some alignment. And I think moving first towards like best practices. And it's not necessarily same amount of homework per building, but it'd be for like equivalent classes. So in pre-calculus across any high school class, we would want it to be similar. Ninth grade English, we don't want, even within one building, I think I would say a decade ago, you could have a ninth grade English teacher at Issaquah High School, and you would get this much work and this much grading, and another ninth grade English class, you get this much work and this much grading. And like we wanted to reduce that variability, and that I think has been largely addressed. Not perfect across any of our buildings when we look at them together. But our hope is that through this work, we would get towards more similar practice. Because what I think sometimes our teachers underestimate how much homework they're leaving for students to do when they like, hey, we gave you time to start in class. And I think they don't always have as much time as they think that they give. And then also, I think they may underestimate how much time it may take a student to do that assignment at home. And so even if every teacher was assigning 20 to 30 minutes a day of homework over 7 classes, that's like 3.5 hours. So I think there's a lot for us to sort of start with just the exploration phase and not, I don't think that we're at any decision point in my mind yet.
Any other comments? I will say my last point on this is that it is a tough discussion. Homework, I think, definitely has a purpose and a meaning. I think there are some discussions around the two perspectives. One, from a student's perspective of the teacher said this was only going to take a half an hour. It takes me 2 hours versus other people that feel like, well, you would have time to do your homework if students weren't spending the number of hours on social media and their little machines. So, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot about where are we at with the amount of homework that you're doing. Really thinking about if learning is your job, why do you have so much that's happening after the workday ends, right? And is that the life that are we teaching you good life-work balance if we're overwhelming you with that? But then it goes into a whole thing of what is the expectation? Well, you do the homework because you need the grade, because you need to get into this college, because that's what colleges still expect. So it's very hard to move a needle on something. Like Director Gallagher was saying, grading is hand in hand with homework. So it was hand in hand with our discussion. It was the next item. Really kind of where are we at? We've been stressing as a board, and this is our operational expectation around grading practices and the consistency of that, that I still feel we're not necessarily meeting. And so I wanted to get others' feedback from that discussion. Dr. Coyne.
I wanted just to circle back on the homework conversation. I was not able to be present for the second day because I had a work commitment. But I think one thing, and Director Gallagher made a good point with this too, is that I think sometimes teachers may not know how buried a student can be when it relates to homework. So I think for parents that are listening or students that are listening, making sure that you're communicating that to the teacher if you are feeling like you're buried and that homework is becoming overwhelming. I think that sometimes is a piece that gets missed because I think teachers want to hear that and need to make sure that they're hearing that to make sure that they're managing what that homework load looks like every night. So just wanted to add that piece.
Oh, and I didn't give you a chance to talk about homework.
Yeah, that's why.
Oh, you did? Yes. Push it up. It takes a second or two and it'll be on, and then you can speak.
Hi. Okay. Is it working? Okay. I just wanted to say that, especially for like people I know, like even if we're like open to like, like spending the time and take all these advanced classes and like we're up for that workload, sometimes, it feels like kind of a mixed bag, and you never really know what you're gonna get just because each and every class, I think, one board member already had spoken a little bit about this, but like how the classes vary from like even within the school or with between teachers, even if you're taking the exact same like on like paper class, um, it can feel like you don't know exactly what's gonna like what your workload's gonna be because each teacher has like their obviously each teacher teaches in their own way, but like there are some teachers who you might not have any homework for, and there's other teachers with that same class where you might have like an hour, and it's hard to like, be able to like balance your schedule or balance your time if there's like such a big disparity. And yeah, I guess that's all I really wanted to like bring up, I guess.
And oh, I could just went. Go ahead.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like that's a really good point of when you're going into a class, you don't really know how much homework that teacher is going to give you. And sometimes like certain classes, like it makes it very hard for you to have another schedule. That's all I really had to say. I know.
Ava.
Just to kind of give an example to exemplify, I guess, that phenomenon. This is, I feel, so common at Issaquah that I know students who will sign up for an AP class but not exactly know what to expect. And then they'll say, okay, if I end up with this teacher, I don't have the capacity to handle the bandwidth of that work. And then they'll go in the fall and ask to be dropped to like the regular level class. And if it's that unpredictable that students are kind of struggling to even plan out their course schedules for the next year, and they need to, excuse me, and they need to adapt on the basis of what teacher they get and what that workload looks like, um, I think it just kind of speaks to the disparity that's still going on.
Rex.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is definitely something that I've seen this year for a lot of the math classes at Issaquah High School. And I know that's been a topic of just a reoccurring topic, especially for those taking pre-calculus. But with all these new math classes and the addition of CHS into the course curriculum, I think a lot of students have been misled into thinking that CHS was comparable to the on-level pre-calc of last year, when I think there's been a little bit of there's been a disparity in the course load expectations. And so I think that's just something that I thought I'd bring up as we're talking about just the equitable courses throughout the district and even within the schools.
Okay, thank you. Noah.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a little bit more since we were talking about school in relation to like homework and time at home. It also really affects extracurriculars and the experience that we want to have exposure to in high school. Like personally, I had a friend where we both had the same class, but we got different teachers and we both wanted to do this sport and she just did not have the time for it and she ended up having to drop the sport because she did want to commit to doing that work and putting in the work for that. So extracurriculars is another thing that homework definitely affects.
Thank you. Harlan and then Krish.
Yeah, and I think that just to follow up on that, I think that is why we're talking about it, just to understand our why. Like,
is your mic
school,
on?
And it is.
Okay.
School, I can't get any closer to it.
Yeah.
Schoolwork is an inevitable part of a school. But to what Director Morales said, you're already in school 7 hours a day. Like that's like what we work, and you bring all this work home. But there's so much more richness to life that we want you to have, that we know is key to those profiles that we had. There are sports, that are extracurricular activities. So there's a survey that comes out in the springish time, I think, when the district did, that provided us data for like how much time you're spending on homework. Make sure that you and all your friends and everyone in your school fills that out, because the bigger the N size, the more helpful it will help us. But I think in thinking about what we're hearing just from our students, it would be an added question would be helpful is like, did homework limit your ability to fully participate in a club? Did homework limit your ability to fully participate in a sport? I think rather than the time-based part, that I think all of us will kind of, both our teaching staff and us, feel like, are we like, how valid is the actual percent or number of hours or reporting that they spend on homework? But what is really meaningful is if no matter what that number is, if that prevented them from having a job or from doing a sport or from being able to participate meaningfully in clubs, that would be really important information, far more important than actually how many hours they're spending. So as we do those annual surveys, if that could be added, because I think that'd be really helpful information for me to know, because then I don't care what the number is, it's too much.
Krish and then Director Coyne.
Thank you. I know we've been talking a lot about homework. My freshman year across like my math classes, at least just within the building at Liberty, there's a lot of like inconsistencies between classes. And I guess it's like kind of a good thing. But when I took pre-calculus last year, going back to that example, at least the syllabus was consistent amongst all the other classes. Each teacher teaches differently. They have their own styles. Some of them are very homework heavy and some of them are also not homework heavy. Another thing is I've noticed this like time spent homework example come up. I think the time is kind of like a flawed analysis for measuring homework. I think, often I find myself taking 20 minutes on an assignment that takes 45 or, 2 hours for a 30 minutes assignment. I think it goes back to like, how does this piece of homework tie back into the learning? Is it busy work or is it something that's expanding your knowledge?
Right. Thank you. Director Coyne.
I want to go back to Director Gallinger's point on asking the question on did homework prevent you from having a balanced high school life? And I do think it's a good question to ask. I'm wondering though, is there a distinction between homework and I guess maybe preparing for an exam or a major project that maybe is tied to the course itself? Because I think there's a lot of time obviously that's spent preparing for exams that may be separate from just the daily homework component of it. I don't know if you have a thought on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to broadly define it in the survey. Homework is not just like you're bringing home assignment that you didn't finish in class.
Yeah.
Like in our house, like, see, it's Thursday. So already from Sunday night through Thursday, there's been well over 25 hours of at-home time to do biology test, social studies timed right, math test, all in these first 4 days of the week. And yes, so to your point, it's a lot of it is the prep time.
No.
Not quote, like I got a homework assignment.
No. Good point. Thank you.
Okay. So that's why it's very difficult. You start to talk about grading and it goes back to homework. So going back to grading, I think is really kind of some consistency. And I think even Director Mullings had flashed back to former board director Ann Moore and her twin daughters taking the same class at the same school, but different teachers, much to what we've heard from our students, in a significantly different experience. And one of the things that we are trying to do is to create some sameness, as was mentioned in public comment. We want some sameness because we want the expectations to be similar. I don't want vastly higher expectations at one school and lower expectations at another. I don't want to be saying, if you take these classes from this teacher, their whole gimmick is that it's super hard, and that this teacher is all about relationships and you going and having opportunities to spend time with your family, right? So that kind of distinct variability is what we're trying to get away from in homework, and we're trying to get away from in grading. In this class, homework is 50%. In this class, homework's only 10%. In this class, this pre-calc, we have tests after every unit, but in this pre-calc, we only have maybe every other unit, or we get to take retakes. This class doesn't get to take retakes. Those are the things in this system. They're systematized that we're trying to clear up. And so we had a whole discussion again around grading and wanted to hear if there was any other feedback. Director Taylor.
Just 2 points just on the concept of grading too, that I think we are interested in from a principal standpoint, which is wanting to make sure that grading practices allow our students to maintain hope wherever they are in the class, the time of the class, meaning that one grade early on doesn't necessarily sink your possibilities of getting a good grade in the class. So wanting to make sure that the system allows for that. And then also wanting to make sure that the grade is a reflection of mastery of the subject matter at the end of the course, not at some point in time during the course, but that at the end of the course, that if a student has mastered and had opportunities to continually reflect that mastery, that their grade reflects the end product, so to speak, not a point in time. So
Maybe you
Dr.
could give your
Gallagher.
example.
I was about to
because
take that.
then I would love to respond to that example.
So my example that I shared was, let's say you have a student in class and they get there's 5 tests. They get a 70, a 70, a 70, a 70, and a 70. Basic math. They're getting a C in the class. But imagine if the student goes from a 90 to an 80 to a 70 to a 60 to a 50, they're still getting a C in the class. But if they go from a 50 to a 60 to a 70 to an 80 to a 90, you average that out, they're still getting a C in the class. Completely different measurements, completely different issues that really need to be dealt with for the student. And again, I will also go back to it seems that grades are currency that you earn to spend at the college of your choice and not communication. And they should really be about communicating. Have you achieved the mastery needed? Do you understand the concepts then the standards that this class is trying to teach you? And then we can get in a whole discussion of, does it take 150 hours to get there? But that's another topic. So then, Director Gallinger.
I think this is the hard part, is like, how do you actionalize and operationalize this with a teaching staff as big as we have? Good luck. But I think we want it to be philosophically on a reflection of what the student like knows or can do, like to be really skill based and less performative of like, oh, did they turn in that homework assignment from their first week of school? And I think it's really hard. And yes, there's a connection between like, certainly there are certain, like as you've alluded to in math, like if you don't do the math homework and do the math practice, you're probably going to have a harder time performing on the test. So some of those things are related and do matter. But then there's the parts about, hey, you're learning how to write. And if you already knew how to write, then you wouldn't be learning how to write. So why does the C you get on your first time to write reflective of, if you're then, to your point, getting a B and then an A? And yeah, surely the genres could be nuanced and different, but still the basic concept of like how you write is how you write. And so if over the course of that semester, you've demonstrated like, wow, you started and you had all these gaps on the rubric, and then now like you're nailing it. Like, why should that be averaged out and like, oh, your overall grade's a B minus? Like, when really you've ended the class, and to the teacher's credit, like they've filled those gaps for you and you've performed. It doesn't make any philosophical sense why, nor does it incentivize, I think, the right kind of learning that we want our students, that is lifelong. Like for all of us that do day jobs, like it isn't like, oh, our first product that we decide to turn in or not turn in, like we work on it until we get it to the finalization that we want, and then we present it or do whatever. And that's more real world and real life. And so I feel like grading as it currently exists is a challenge. And I don't know if we'll ever get to the idealized state, because how do you actually then do that for 6,000 students with fidelity? I don't know.
Well, learning is iterative, is what you're saying. Really, I mean, if you know of any video game publishers out there today, they never come out with a product that's done. There's always the first day huge patch of all the bugs, right? Because they're iterating on their learning. And it goes back to my other statement of, your points-based grading is pointless. It is all subjective. Even when you do it with maths and decimal points, it still ends up being subjective at the end of the day. Director Taylor, Director Coyne? Okay. Did the students, oh, is it okay if I go to the students? Okay, but remind me to let you speak. Did the students have anything to say around the grading portion of our discussion? Rex?
Yeah, thank you. I think the one thing that I've noticed when I talk to teachers about like their opinions on these grading policies is they feel so concerned that they're going to have to drastically change their curriculums, that they're going to be forced to teach a certain way that they aren't used to teaching, and they feel that they'll inadequately prepare their students for achieving mastery in those subjects. So I guess I'm wondering, like, how will we still preserve these teachers' ability to teach in the way that feels most right for them while still balancing that out with what we've been talking about, keeping these equitable grading practices so that you don't end up with the bad teacher that gives all the homework?
Well, and I think that's much of the discussion is how do you operationalize some of this? Superintendent.
I think the important piece that came out was sort of philosophy and sort of the goal of why homework is an extension of learning and sort of what's the purpose. And I think that's an important thing to reset on versus what are the tactics of the amount of hours, that kind of thing. So I think that's number one. Number two is, as it relates to both homework and grading, limiting variability is helpful because then you're not too out of line from each other. I don't think we're aiming for standardization, which I think is a different thing. And I think that's a helpful clarification that was discussed at the board retreat. I do know that there was a lot of progress made in terms of actually helping to gain more clarity for our teachers and our district together through the collective bargaining agreement that was just recently signed for the next couple of years. And there's also a grading practices committee. And that's actually another opportunity to work through some of these really big questions, because operationalizing this does take that kind of dialogue back and forth, resetting on some of the conversations that have been had over the years, but also taking any new instances of question that are at hand and saying, hey, how do we tackle this? And or discuss what implications there might be from the expectations that are currently in the collective bargaining agreement. So all of this is good topics. And I know that we are continuing to get to the next version, or version 10. I'm not sure what version we're on, but if we take every year, then, that is certainly probably version 10.
There's two technical pieces that I would love clarity on so that 12 months from now, we would hopefully put these two to bed. One is I would like to see uniformity for the concept that I hear about at Issaquah High School is AP tests, and your performance on AP tests affects your grade. So I think it should either affect your grade or it shouldn't affect your grade. And then if the collective amongst all the teachers it affects your grade, then it should be that uniformly across our whole district. I don't have any skin in the game for what the decision is, but I have a hard time with it being scattershot on what teacher you happen to draw out of the bag, because as a student, you don't get to choose that. So it is unfair and inequitable for there to be a different grading practice for the quote grade bump. So that's something that I think should be put to bed, because that continuing inequity is not good for students. The second thing is I would love there to be clarity on the status of an A-, because for Sammamish, that is split exactly in half. If you happen to go to Eastlake High School, if you have a 90, you have an A. If you happen to live south of 8th and you go to Skyline, you have a 90, you have an A-. So in the same city, your transcripts will look different. And over the course of the accumulation of your transcript, if you have 90 all the way through, at Skyline, you graduate with a 3.7, and at Eastlake, you graduate with a 4.0. That 0.3 difference in GPA, whether we all probably collectively disagree with that concept of points-based currency, like it's revolting, but nonetheless, that's the current currency system that we have. And so until that currency system changes, which I will be happy to send on to any letter to advocate for that change at the higher ed level, I think we need to not be putting Issaquah school district students at a disadvantage from our surrounding peer districts in the region that they're directly competing against for college.
Director Taylor.
I just want to make a couple more comments. It's I think all the comments we've had from our student reps is great anecdotal evidence of why this matters and why we're continuing to have this discussion, because it's their lived experience. So I hope that we, continue down the path of trying to find solutions to these things. But I think I do want to say is I do believe that most of our staff and our teachers are also interested in fairness, and sometimes, maybe do not have the visibility of the entire system or anything like that too. So I know teachers also want to try to strive for fairness as well. So I don't want teachers to think that I'm out there bashing on them necessarily.
Anything else? Krish and then Ava.
Thank you. I want to go back to a point that Director Gallagher brought up about the bumping your grade up based on the AP test score. So my experience with that at Liberty is that no teachers use that to bump your grade down, rather up. It goes back to the point that Director Maralda brought up about promoting continuous progress and improvement. But it is not uniform though. Last year I took a class, an AP class. I struggled at the start of the year. But I got better as the year went on and I got a grip on it. However, that grade bump on with the AP test would have definitely helped me out. And I was kind of frustrated this year when a couple of my friends took the class this year and now all of a sudden, if they score highly on the AP exam, their grade will be bumped up to reflect that. I think that's also something that kind of needs to be uniform, and I think that's a great way, or a great start at least, to promote that continuous progress and improvement.
Ava?
Okay, thank you. I just want to start off by building on that point about AP grade bumps and them kind of being a good benchmark for students improving throughout the year and being able to demonstrate their mastery at a certain endpoint. That students are also aware is coming. My main question here is, I know a lot of teachers use AP test grade bumps to kind of even out the class. Like they'll make the class harder than the AP test so that students are well prepared, and then bump students when they do well on the test. And I know that's common, especially amongst like upperclassmen AP classes, or classes that are typically taken by upperclassmen. So my question there is, if we are saying, okay, now every class has an AP grade bump or no class has an AP grade bump, how do we proceed to then kind of even out those differences amongst teachers? And then how does that impact student performance on the AP test if, say, the class is now on level to the test as opposed to harder? My other thought here is, when it comes to students being able to demonstrate mastery on the tests, I know there's also a lot of students who put in a lot of really great, thoughtful work outside of class. They're really dedicated to a certain subject matter, and that is reflected in their homework. But there's someone who is maybe not a great test taker or struggles to demonstrate a certain skill in that timed environment. And for students like that, homework can provide kind of that padding for a grade and the reflection of their efforts. Is that something that we're seeking to preserve? And if so, how?
Well, to the answer to your second question, that has been so much of the conversation over the years around homework. So it is, where is the fine tuning that can happen there? And so I think that that's a very real issue that we are, would need to also deal with how do you operationalize this? What is homework? How is it meaningful? For some people, it is the key thing that they need to support their grade and their overall work. As far as for your first question, I think that's some of what we would need to discuss is how, that Director Gallagher is speaking to is, what are we doing about the grade bump and how would we go about systematizing that? So that's an unanswered question that we'll need to be working on. Because we did not hit enough third rail topics. Oh, did you? I'm sorry.
Just briefly, just wanted to quickly ask about the idea of moving away from a points-based system for grading. I just wanted to see if the board had any idea right now on like what that might look like, because I know that that's such a foundational element of our education system, and it's what most colleges look for around the world. So is there any idea of what that might look like and how that kind of might fit into our system, or is that just kind of like an idea right now?
If I had my perfect dream, you already have it, and you can ask our Gibson X students what their transcript looks like, because they actually work on it starting in day one. They get to actually add things to it. So any project they do goes into their transcript. And our staff has been actually, because we've were some of the groups piloting that transcript. It's called a mastery-based transcript. You can look it up online. That there are colleges that are accepting that mastery-based transcript. So if I had a solution, I think I would already have one in place. But how that would look, how it would operationalize, again, is a big, big ask. This is Marnie and her big dreams. So if I were to change education today, it would not look like it does today. So along all of the topics, you think those were hot topics, we ended with accelerated learning, where we really talked about what is a success block, why do we need separate pullout systems for accelerated learning, how do we really determine much of that, who governs us? We're our own governors as to whether or not we're following the laws. What is enrichment versus accelerated learning? What does that look like? For me, before I send it to everyone else, for me, what I thought was most surprising is because 40 to 60% of our elementary students operate at a level 4 in math, our math is automatically harder. And so we are already operating at a higher level, making sure that they're stretching, so that my big aha is like, well, maybe that's why our students who are at level 1 and level 2 are struggling so much in our schools, is because maybe our math isn't actually on grade level, but advanced in the elementary system. So I thought that was interesting. Wanted to hear of other discussions or items that you wanted to bring up about this not very hot topic. That was sarcasm. I do too, it said. Yes, go ahead, Micah.
I guess one concern that I had, or not concern, but a question that I had was, I know a lot of students in the Issaquah School District are interested in like going to college or like some sort of post-secondary education. And obviously, as like the board and the district continues to refine the education system to like suit the needs of everybody, and if we're more unconventional like ways were continuing to be added onto like the learning system, would there be any like concern about how like college preparedness would be thought about, especially because in generally, like I know in college systems things are very much like a certain way of like test based or like based on one final exam, and obviously like the school should cater to all students, not just college bound students, but I know for a lot of people like college is like the primary concern. And I just want to make sure that like in the reforms of the education system, that like people still feel like ready once they go to like college, and like the system like prepared them for that.
Dr. Coyne.
Thank you for that comment. And I think I just want to mention to folks too, when we had the conversation around the profile of the graduate, we looked at the different directions potentially that we could go in the future. And I think it's really key to say future, and nothing would be overnight. And it would, and I'm not even sure how dramatic the changes would be. I'd probably lean more on the more traditional side, I guess I would say, from a grading standpoint. But I do think that there are opportunities. I think there's opportunities for us to learn from a Gibson-Eck model. But I just want to make sure that for our students and for parents that are listening, none of this is happening immediately. This is just conversation. And that's actually one of the reasons why we want to bring the concept of the profile of a graduate to our upcoming town hall meetings, because we want to hear from the community. We want to hear what our community thinks about how we think about education moving forward. So again, I just want to stress for folks, nothing will be changed overnight by any means.
And this is a yes and. So like we know through anecdotal and data that our students go on to college who choose to do so and do very well for themselves. So that represents a little over 6 in 10 of our graduates go directly onto a 4-year college. Many more go on to a 2-year college. But we want to do more than that. Like for me, it's 2 parts. One, I think we can do more for the students who choose not to go directly to a 4-year college. And I think we should do it, because 6 in 10, that means 4 in 10 don't. That's a significant number. two, I think I would love there to be a more reflective process. And I hope that when we talk about what were our ideals in the profile of a graduate, that through the process of learning and the time from when you enter our system as a kindergartner all the way through high school, then there could be pauses where you can actually stop and reflect on like why am I learning what I'm learning, and how is it going to best scaffold into what my future is? Because I think sometimes the pace of our coursework is such that there's no time for reflection. It's just I have to move on to prepare for the next test and the next exam and the next paper and the next whatever. Versus I'd love for there to be more time for you to be like, oh, okay, so I think that after I've been through my freshman year at Liberty, that now I'm really interested in like what a career in electrical engineering is. And then I can have time to be, okay, well, these are the courses that I should take, and that there's someone to support me in that school to help me to know, hey, maybe I could go shadow and like spend some time with, and all the great parts about Gibson Eck that allows them to get that real world learning. Like we want that for every student. Now we know we can't do Gibson Eck for 6,000 high school students. We can't afford that. But what we do know is that we can start taking nibbles at that so that your learning is more meaningful. And it's just like when you have a teacher that is really passionate about their subject, it's a lot easier to learn from. Likewise, when you're choosing a subject that like, wow, because I know this is going to be something that I want as part of my future, it's going to be that much more engaging just by virtue of regardless of the content and who's teaching. So we want there to be time for the reflection so you can really know, hey, here's where I think my destination is, and it's okay to change, but this is then therefore my path that I have individualized for that. So it's not a instead of, it's really to be able to deepen your sense of like and purpose of learning that I think sometimes we don't have time for because the flywheel is spinning so fast from one assessment to the other. Does that make sense?
Any questions or comments on the accelerated learning piece? I know one of the questions I asked, or talked about was that we have certain programming that we do for students who achieve certain measures on cognitive and non-verbal, non-written tests that evaluate them. That's done in second grade to determine whether or not they're in a self-contained classroom with accelerated learning. And we call that Merlin in our district. And right now the cutoff I think is 97%. And I'm like, what would happen if we change that to 96? Because again, we police it ourselves. We make that determination. It might be 95 in another school district. And so when we're looking at, well, what would the difference in learning? Would that student who is in the 96th percentile not be able to achieve the same results as the students that are in the 97th and up? So why are we closing it? And of course, I made my other quip comment, which is it's called a gifted program because it's a nice gift of programming wrapped in a box and only given to certain students. So how is the learning happening in that classroom that only those students can achieve? Or is there a way that we can take that same type of learning, whether it's project-based learning, is there a way that we can provide that to all students and that all students will have access to it? I think that's really an important piece to me. Or are we sure that the students that are in there are the only ones qualified to do that work? And is there something we could do to break down some of the barriers, reduce the number, the percentile that you have to be? What if it was the 96th percentile or the 95th percentile? How would that change our system? What students would it then include that it's not including today? So those were some of my questions around that. I don't know if there were any other comments related to the accelerated learning piece.
I'll just add on to that. I think that was a big takeaway from that conversation, that there seems to be opportunities for more acceleration in our elementary schools. And so then that, begs the next question, which is, so what does that look like? Yeah, but to your point.
So I think just for clarity, I think that the percentiles you're using actually are, it's much higher than that actually to qualify for Merlin. I think it's like 99.99, but be wrong. I worry that as much as we focus on ensuring that all of our students can hit academic milestones, that I don't want it to get lost on to what you started the conversation off with, when the largest bucket of students is already above grade level. And I want to make sure that they still get challenged and have learning opportunities. So I hope, and part of the discussion at the retreat was for when they do the differentiated learning, that there's targeted learning for our students that can then challenge themselves more. Because the discussion was, how do we then open the doors and create more opportunities for our older elementary students as they get ready to prepare to go into middle school, so they can be more equipped if they want to so choose a higher level math pathway. Because we know that certain math pathways in middle school allow you to hit certain high school course targets and tracks. And we want students to be able to widely and broadly choose how that is. And so that's my hope is that as you look at success blocks, that it will be inclusive of how our highest performing students in our elementary grades can still get challenged.
From my perspective, the whole purpose of the conversation, which I think actually we were all very aligned with, and the topic was around how do we continue to have more opportunities for all of our learners, but also our learners who are ready to be pushed and challenged. So that was a really great outgrowth of that conversation. And there's no action right now, back to sort of clarifying where we are with different topics. It was really an important step to say we all have a shared commitment to ensuring we create more opportunities for all of our students, in particular focusing on, in that conversation, those that are willing and ready to be challenged. So thank you for that conversation.
So that just shows with the public how in-depth our conversations are, that it took us an hour and a half to summarize 2 days worth of meetings. But thank you for all of that. That really is the key work that we have not been able to do for a long time, to really get into those deep philosophical discussions. So I do appreciate that. So next, I'm only like an hour behind. Works in progress. Oh, work study recap. See, look, I'm just thought I'd skip the whole. What did we talk about? So during the work study, we had an opportunity to take a look at performance metrics for the district, looking at some top 5 things that we wanted to make sure we had a good baseline and then be able to track over the next several years. So looking not only at academics, but the responses from our community and from our staffing, that the Issaquah is a great place to be. So I don't know if there's anyone that wants to give their thoughts on tonight's work study. Director Coyne.
I think you summed it up well. I think it was good to look at some of those key metrics. I think it'll be interesting as we think about what I'm sure folks have heard about before, a net promoter score. So yeah, essentially, how likely are you to recommend the Issaquah School District to a friend or colleague? And really leaning into surveying our community, parents and non-parents of current students in the district, and then also looking at that net promoter score from staff as well. So it was interesting to think about those metrics and align with some of our academic metrics that we look at too. So good conversation tonight.
Any others? Superintendent.
I always do love a good discussion around metrics and what those mean, and how both there's all these different ways to go deeper with one metric. And we also did a good job, I think, talking about where all the different sources are, because we have the OSPI report card, we have our own dashboards. There's actually a lot of data that we track in education. So being able to simplify what we're looking at a very high level, and at a very public level is, I think, very important. Of course, we will always track all these other data points behind the scenes in our day-to-day practice to sort of continue to learn and grow and get on short cycles of continuous improvement. But it's these big public measures that I think are really helpful to say what are important and what they mean and what they signify throughout the learning journey. So we all know through research and sort of through time that third grade is a really critical pivotal moment to be able to have strong English language arts foundations. So you're moving from learning to read to reading to learn, and that sets you up on a really important pathway through the rest of your educational journey, having good foundations in math by the end of middle school, and then those early, that first year in high school, being able to really be on track right away is an important opportunity to assess and help support kids if they need it. So helpful conversation on the learning journey and milestones throughout the educational experience, K-12.
Anything else? I think the final piece for me was the discussion around whether or not to look specifically as we're tracking the metrics for our opportunity gap, meaning the difference between all students and then students either receiving like special services or students of color, to make sure that we're closing those gaps. Or are we going to look at the overall aggregate number and focusing on the overall aggregate number, because you will not achieve growth without actually having intentional work towards our populations that are not doing achieving at the same level. And so that was part of that discussion. I really appreciated that. Okay, now we can move to works in progress.
Okay, great. Well, I was going to talk a little bit more about the profile of a graduate, but we did talk about that quite a bit already. However, I do want to note that I am part of a Google GSV, which stands for Global Silicon Valley Fellowship, and I'm tying the work that's happening with the profile of a graduate, in particular around the aspect of what actually is needed now with the very rapid rise of artificial intelligence and agentic AI that is different from sort of these very timeless characteristics and skills that have been really transferable and that have been acknowledged in the past that are very important for all young people to know as they go into the workforce. So I'm using that to really think about that, and had a tuning session with a mentor assigned to me, a superintendent from Allentown, Pennsylvania, had an introduction meeting with a coach, a superintendent from Oakland, California, and then a session to tune with another peer in my fellowship group who is an area superintendent in New York City, to just be able to continue to make progress on that one. I want to make note that on a monthly basis, and sometimes because we only have one meeting a month, it will happen in that one meeting, that I always want to make sure I acknowledge all the different amazing things that are happening for this month and the upcoming sort of 6-ish weeks, to say what we're seeing, how we're recognizing different holidays, whether we're in school or not. But I want to make sure that we raise awareness of the various ways our community celebrates based on their identity and their culture. And so this is an important moment to just recognize that. We will always have this on our agenda. I'll probably make sure it comes forward, at least verbally from my point of view, once a month to highlight this. There are so many different ways we recognize this upcoming set of weeks that it's hard to do all at on an individual level. So I want to make sure everyone has that visibility into what's happening, and it's a lot. So I appreciate that, and we can honor that and recognize when people are celebrating cultural or religious holidays, that we make sure that those are respected and valued, and that our students are seen for what they're bringing to our school community. I do want to talk about an important fun event that happened this past weekend, because I would be remiss if I didn't talk about it, which is Salmon Days. It's not only when the salmon run, but it's also a unique opportunity in the Issaquah community and the greater surrounding in our district areas, greater surrounding areas in our district, to just be in community and to highlight this amazing area. So I want to thank Director Taylor, who volunteered with our team for a couple hours. And I saw some great pictures of you engaging with families and people stopping by our tent. I know that President Meralda was actually around all weekend in another leadership capacity, but was doing some double duty at various moments, I know, and got to sort of walk by all the different, by our tent as well. So that was great. Director Coyne helped stop by, and I think he came by just to chat for a little bit, but I enlisted him in some additional help. So appreciate your support in helping us break down the tent for the day as we prepared for the next day. And I know that Director Mullings was in the parade as well. So really kudos to the Greater Issaquah Chamber of Commerce for leading this incredible effort. It's an all-volunteer event. It is the largest festival in the state of Washington. So that's a pretty amazing honor in our community here. We had some students in the parade. We had a bus in the parade. So really a great way to showcase the talents of our staff and our students and to promote our district by having a tent on the Field of Fun. I also want to say a special shout out to our district, my district colleagues who staffed that tent over the course of the weekend. I have a lot of names on my list of people to thank, but really it's an opportunity not only to represent our district, to talk to families. I got a lot of new information from families, and I already followed up on some of those items that were raised to me. But it's just an opportunity to also see our colleagues outside of the day-to-day work and have a fun time. So luckily, the weather was also nice, so we didn't have to be huddled underneath the tent. In other news, there is a government shutdown, and I do want to make sure I always say what's happening as that relates to our work. We are in week 2 of that government shutdown, and there currently is no impact to us, but we are looking ahead at the next 2 to 3 weeks, and if that does start to continue to persist, we will start to maybe have some impact, but I'll keep the board and the district apprised of that. I'm also participating on an OSPI K-12 funding work group, which I've talked about before. I'm on the student-weighted funding subgroup, and we are finalizing tomorrow a summary of our discussions and suggestions for next steps. Our goal was not to make recommendations for what to do, but it was to discuss and align on what some core values might be and what some possible recommendations for further exploration and or discussion would be. So some highlights that we're going to be recommending include conducting a thorough and methodical study of states that have transitioned to weighted funding models that focus on students' needs first. Second is that we recommend that we prioritize currently available solutions in the upcoming legislative session to address the urgency of making sure that we are improving equity in our current funding model. And then finally is to identify a list of student weights that are important to be considered in a possible funding model. So that's just where we are on that one, and that's some of our recommendations. It's been a very quick and rapid process. And then we are planning for the next high school, so we are waiting for round 2 of comments to come back from the city of Issaquah based on the review process that we're currently in to modify our current permit so that we can move forward with a phased approach to build a high school that is based on our current available funding. And so after we do receive that round 2 of comments from the city, we'll have 1 week to respond, but we're on track with the original timeline that was laid out in our prior capital projects updates and in the last board meeting specifically. And the board can expect more information and the community can expect more information about this in our next meeting, but also we'll be planning to launch information about how to engage on both the design values for this next high school that would impact programming starting as early as December. And I was going to talk about the Levy Advisory Committee, but that is actually up next. And so I do want to say that's been work that was pretty powerful and incredible in terms of the power of that group, the process that we went through. And I'm going to pause there and turn it back to President Meraldo.
Great. Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda, and sorry for those of you that are public speaking and had to wait this long, but it's the first review of our levy proposal and levy advisory committee update. We'll start this off with a motion, then a presentation from the from staff, then we will go to public comment, and then we'll go to comments from the board and superintendent, and then any action if applicable.
Would you like a motion on all 3? Oh. What's it?
There is. So that's usually we start with a motion. So why don't we do the presentation and public input, and then we'll go to the motion discussion, and we'll wrap our discussion as a board around each motion.
Makes sense. Great.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna kick us off for 1 second here. Sorry, I was Martin was stepping up there, and I kind of lost a minute in my head. But I wanted to say thank you to the committee and to the team. Again, great work and kudos, especially to the core team. And I'll name those members: Martin Turney, Mark Sherwood, Marcel Hauser, Jacqueline Downey, and Wendy Castleman with incredible operational support. And I miss Nancy; she just left, but Nancy Francis played a key role in supporting that group to be well fed and well cared for. As you know, that we are excited to put forward this motion. I did accept the recommendation of the committee, and I'll pass it over to Martin to talk through a bit about where we were and lead us to where we are. And I'll talk more about that when we get to that point.
Thank you, Superintendent Talia. As mentioned, we are here to summarize the work of the Levy Advisory Committee and their final recommendation. Transition into the superintendent's levy recommendations for your review, and then also introduce the levy resolutions that go along with these for your consideration. Just a reminder for you and the public, there's a February 10th ballot date, and we potentially will have 3 levies on the ballot, a 4-year EP&O, 4-year capital levy, combined technology and critical repairs, and a 1-year transportation levy. So that's what we'll be talking about. Where are we in the big timeline of the levy? So we had meetings 1 through 4 at the Levy Advisory Committee in September, wrapped that up. Meeting number 5 was 2 nights ago. So wrap that up here in October. We're talking to you tonight, and potentially levy resolutions passing in this month, either tonight or potentially another meeting. We will file those with the county as soon as we have those in hand. And then that kicks off kind of our community update and engagement phase, right? We need to, it is our responsibility to advertise for pro-con committee members. So that's one aspect that we need to do. Ballots go out in January, and then of course, the ballot election day on the 10th, and certified usually 10 days later. So just a reminder of that timeline. So now I'll get into the work of the Levy Advisory Committee. As I mentioned, there were 5 meetings that we conducted, and the first being kind of a foundational meeting, talking about some of the basics of what levies are and what school funding is, and then getting right into discussion of the first transportation levy. Then we moved sequentially through. Meeting number 2 was all about the capital levy, technology and critical repairs. Meeting 3 dedicated to the EP&O, big topic. Meeting 4, we got to bring it all back together, talk through each one of these again, finalize, and give a final recommendation. And then we were able to talk about communications in the 5th meeting. One really cool thing, and Mr. Hauser was instrumental in helping set this up. We got bonus material before each of these meetings, which we haven't done before. So we got to allow folks to ride an electric bus at the first meeting. We did a tour of May with the second meeting. We had a panel about nursing and counseling. And of course, we had a very popular student panel at one of our meetings, which was very good. Student input on this committee was excellent, and it was extremely valuable. So just to expand on that, we had over 60 students, parents, caregivers, staff, community members from across the district that applied, and we accepted all of the applicants. So I think we had a pretty good representation throughout the district, and most folks showed up as they could, which was a pretty good turnout. We already kind of talked about what we went through and the cadence. Purpose, we want to make sure that the committee was aware. They were there to advise the superintendent on her recommendation to you. It included those 3 levy areas, and there were some parameters, like keeping the tax rate stable. So I had to work within those parameters. But we also wanted to make sure, we have correct resources to meet mission and student goals, maintain facilities, prioritize safety and security, and also have potential future opportunities. So we kicked it off with kind of grounding in the parameter to keep the tax rate stable. Later, I'm going to explain to you that we got some new information in the past week, and so the superintendent's recommendation is going to take that into account. This was a consensus model, so working with the shared purpose, inclusive voice, collaborative process, we defined that consensus model and a collective recommendation. So to be more specific, here's kind of the general process we used in this committee. Was we brought initial proposals to the committee. We used polling and other feedback methods to gather input and feedback from the committee members. And based on that, we either made a modification to that proposal, or we kept the proposal as as is to become a final proposal. So what I'm going to show you is the committee feedback and the final proposal, which they voted on. So we'll walk through that. Starting with the transportation levy. So the transportation levy, there was some broad support for kind of stepping into the next phase of electric buses, along with replacing our diesel buses, as most of our fleet is. But we came across the sense that, you know, the committee would like to see this roll out, not just in one area of the district, but more generally throughout the district. So if we could pilot this, there was a sense that it would be well received to add a charging station to our main facility and try these routes out around the district. So with that, there was a modified final proposal that said, hey, we can rearrange the amount of electric buses we purchase. We can add an electric charging facility, potentially at the main facility by Issaquah High School. So we can actually continue our piloting of these buses, but we can do it throughout the district. And then there was a choice, right? So during the committee meetings, one of the things that came up was, well, could we just not run this? So one of the decisions was, do you like the final proposal as modified per your feedback, or would you like to not run a transportation levy? And so this overwhelmingly, the votes were to run the modified transportation levy package. So that's what it looks like. Reflecting back, so what we did was kind of walk through how we built out these little pieces that go into the tax rate. So this is how that shows up, $2 million, 3 cents. And we work our way through, right? So we went through these sequentially. So the capital levy we took in 2 parts, the first being technology. And essentially it was about, do we continue what we're doing and do we try to make room for some new initiatives? And so we tested those with the committee, ran through some table exercises. There was a preference for maintaining the one-to-one device. And there was a sense that the new initiatives were well received. Wi-Fi buses ranked a little bit lower. So we took that into account in a modified final proposal for the committee. And we were doing a lot of these things already. And the committee said there's value in providing for these new initiatives, being leveraging AI for education, data warehouse, crisis alert, safety platform, digital security testing and training, and device upgrades and modernization. This is the vote for technology. So out of a 5 possible score, 4.7 said strongly agree with that package, that final proposal. And this reflects, again, this is the resulting potential tax rates, and we're going to build that into a final, how it all adds up at the end. Moving into critical repairs, there was quite a bit of consensus that what was in the package, things like roofing, HVAC, safety, fields, vestibules, even project management and miscellaneous repairs, it all felt like it was necessary and high priority, right? So overall, essentially, the proposal was thorough and fiscally responsible. So in that case, this was not modified. So we brought back as a final proposal what we had brought originally, adding up to about $55 million. And the final vote on that from the committee out of 5 got a 4.7, strongly agree. Again, reflected back what that's going to look like in terms of a tax rate. And that rounded out capital levy. So then we got to move into EP&O. Now, obviously EP&O, the educational programs and operations levy is a big one for us. That's at almost 17% of our operating budget. So we broke it into kind of 3 strategic areas, right? So the EP&O touches on all of the strategic areas, but 3 primarily. So we kind of bucketed it that way. I talked about student well-being and some examples of what typically is paid for there, academic opportunities, and organizational effectiveness. A couple of things that came out of that conversation was some top rated priorities being mental health and variability supports. That's things like MTSS. Also strongly endorsed were early learning opportunities, safety and security, and expanded dual language, including Mandarin. And so overall, all of these potential expansion areas tested very well. So we did not modify based on that the final proposal. So in terms of continuing what we're doing in those three bucketed strategic areas, that was well received. And also the committee felt that they thought that potential areas for expansion were a good idea, and they would be willing to see that in the next 4 years. So this is how that turned out, 4.8 out of 5. Strongly agree with that package being what was ready to be sent to the superintendent. And this is what the resulting tax rates would look like. So then we brought it all back together. So built the puzzle, put it together, showed the committee. Now, when we talk about our combined tax rate, we have to add back in the existing bond debt, so we know how we get to the 317. So here we are making it to that parameter of 317 that we set for ourselves. What happens is the capital levy, oh, everything disappears. There we go. The capital levy gets combined. So technology and critical repairs actually are one on the proposal, or excuse me, on the proposition. So we show this as the three buckets: so transportation, capital levy, and EP&O, all combined at 317. If you remember, part of that is bond. And so that kind of got us to the committee. Now, what I forgot to put on there was a slide where we actually voted on this. So not surprising, the others voted, that were well received. This got a 4.8 out of 5, as well as strongly agree. This is what the committee recommended to the superintendent. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to let Mark Sherwood talk a little bit about kind of that fifth meeting and some communications.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Superintendent and the board. Put a couple notes together because I think at the last meeting, you guys wanted to hear a little bit from some of the committee sentiments and some of their feedback on messaging. As Mr. Turney said, this process reflected the board's challenge to go beyond a simple renewal. You asked us to think differently, to explore how levy funding can support innovation, equity, and the evolving needs of all students and families. That challenge guided us through every part of this process. And our exit survey reflected overwhelmingly that this process was preferred by the committee. In our last meeting on October 7th, we did a recap of the levy packages, as you've seen tonight, funding in some budget context. We went through the Public Disclosure Commission regulations and statewide ballot trends. We did a review of levy package strengths and challenges, some recent voter perception studies and community attitude data, and then a little bit about messaging, framing, tactics, and some community engagement strategies. A couple themes definitely emerged. Renewing and responsible. These levies replace expiring ones and maintain a stable tax rate at a fixed amount. Funding what the state does not, including programs, student support services, technology, safety, security, and critical repairs. Transparency and accountability. Strong fiscal oversight ensures responsibility, use of community funds, and they want to make sure that we demonstrate past levy project success. And then ultimately, student experience and community strength. Strong schools build strong communities and enrich overall quality of life. One word that I tend to hear throughout the entire, certainly more in the last meeting and through the entire process, is there was kind of one theme and word that was kind of being defined but used in a variety of different capacities, and that was hope. They were sharing things like hope that our community understands what it means to sustain a strong, high-performing public school district that serves every child, providing academic excellence, social and emotional supports, and opportunities that prepare students for life beyond graduation. Hope that property owners and homeowners understand that when county assessments increase, it's not the district raising taxes, but rather a reflection of strong, healthy community built on solid infrastructure, labor force, a strong market, low crime, rich community amenities that attract and retain families, and quality schools. Hope that homeowners recognize that increased assessed values mean increased equity. Their investment is growing, and the strength of our public schools is a direct contributor to that growth. Hope that residents, including many of our senior citizens who no longer have children in our schools, continue to see how investing in education strengthens neighborhood and builds community connections for everyone. hope for our teachers and support staff that they have the tools and resources to do their best work every day and continue to inspire students to think critically, take risks, recover from setbacks, and thrive. Hope that together we will accept the challenge on behalf of our students to be more engaged, visible, connected throughout this levy process, that it'll take committee and community members, families, students, staff, district leaders, union partners, and the board working purposefully to share facts, building understanding and strengthening trust by being present at community, attending civic and municipal meetings, connecting with our professional organizations and associations, and engaging with faith-based and neighborhood groups. And most importantly, hope that we always remain student-centered because it is our shared responsibility as adults and leaders to help students see that their potential is limitless. And then kind of in closing, the committee shared that almost unanimously, student voice impacted them the most. And several of our student board representatives also participated on our student panel. And I think each of them modeled leadership and confidence and hope, and that the community members saw in themselves. And I think this is probably a good time if they wanted to share any of their comments that they learned from the committee as they were a part of that panel with the board and whoever's listening tonight, if the board wills.
We have some public comment, and then I can definitely hear
Sure.
from other students that were participating.
Sure, thank you.
We do have more slides, so would you like us to continue through the slides?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we'll move into, well, big thank you to all the committee members before we leave the committee, the Levy Advisory Committee section. A lot of time given and a lot of important feedback. We'll move right into the superintendent recommendation portion.
All right. So with that, and I just want to build off of Mark said, Mr. Sherwood said, which is that even though there was a lot of hope and sort of coalescing around at the end, sort of the package that was recommended by the advisory committee, which I appreciated, there was a really great diverse group of voices, and everyone engaged in really thoughtful ways, provided sound feedback throughout, and not everyone agreed, as you see, right? Not everyone agreed on everything. But the use of a consensus model, there was a really strong ability to say, okay, we see the directional feedback and the will of the group, and that sort of was a helpful way for the whole to come together. The process was, as I also saw from some of the exit survey from the last meeting this week, was a positive one for participants, and that's reflected in their feedback. Our students on the committee were amazing. They contributed and were valued by their adult peers. And then recommendation as it worked through the committee, I think, is where I am, which is that I took that whole recommendation unmodified because I thought the process was a good one, and I trust it and I stand by it. So as I'm passing it to the board for consideration tonight and possible action, I just want to make sure I say that it really felt like there was some good conversation. And again, you're not going to get 100% agreement on everything, but there was some very strong agreement by the majority of the group, and that was helpful. So there was also some new information this week that allowed us to make some adjustments. We got new evaluations for our assessment. So I'll pass it over to Martin to show how that then actually plays out math-wise.
Sure, thank you. So again, we saw a version of this earlier when we began the slides on the Levy Advisory Committee. So in the last, up until a few days ago, we were working off an estimate. We now have a preliminary assessed value amount from the county, which means we can pinpoint a little bit closer where we think that assessed value, that tax rate will be in 2026, which is a year before this 4-year levy. So that means that we can project out what we think we're going to keep the tax rate stable at. So it's nice because when we have the objective to keep it stable, it doesn't need to adjust. The amounts that we put out don't need to adjust because it will remain with what we already set. We were set to stay at 317. When it lowers to 309, it automatically is there. So just pointing out that the only thing that's going to change, as the superintendent said, she took the recommendations from the Levy Advisory Committee. The only thing you're going to see change is the estimated resulting tax rate. And that's because this changed. All right, so for transportation, essentially, superintendent mentioned, aligned with the committee recommendation. Again, this one didn't need to change because it's only $2 million. It doesn't change much based on those swings. The rationale, of course, again, I think we mentioned this, committee consensus, student safety and reliability, sustainability objectives, and a balanced approach. It's part of the rationale. Moving into the capital levy first, technology. Aligned with the committee recommendation, sustains those things that we're already doing, and allows for some new initiatives. The new initiatives, 3 of those were aligned out here, but of course it includes all the ones we looked at earlier on the committee recommendation. Rationale is similar. The consensus from the committee, equity and access, security and stability, future-ready learning, operational expectations alignment, and a balanced approach. Critical repairs. I sound like a broken record. Aligned with the committee. Focus on those highest priority facility needs. I will throw in here, this is a balanced, these projects are balanced throughout the district. When you slice up the percentages, the Liberty feeder pattern has just over a third, Skyline in about a third, and Issaquah High School coming in a little bit lower than that. And the main reason for that is we have done some recent field and turf work at Issaquah High School, and that means that it's time for those other 2 high schools to get that done at their, within that 4 years. And we also have just the aging of the roofs in the feeder patterns of those schools means that there's more roof work to do in, say, the south end of the quarter. So wanted to throw that in there. Similar consensus from the committee, safety and well-being, preservation of assets, community benefit, and a balanced approach as the rationale. Bringing us to the big one here, the EP&O. Again, we looked at these in those 3 bucket areas. So essentially sustaining those things that the state doesn't necessarily fund, or that we as a local school district find valuable to make sure we provide. We provided some examples. So levy investment examples in student well-being revolve around health and safety supports, student guidance connections and activities. In the academic opportunities section, those include expanded instructional time and supports, specialized pathways, and bridging state shortfalls in funding. And for the organizational effectiveness, when we talk about staffing and conversation, that helps support and retain staff and lower class sizes. Operational things like custodial and maintenance, obviously clean and safe schools, and transportation allows students to arrive safely at school. So again, this was structured to be below our full legal authority. I'm going to show you a little bit about that in just a second. It aligns with the committee recommendation. And this very busy slide is actually fairly simple, so I'll just explain it real quick. We pulled an estimate from OSPI in early September and said what they expect or projected our full authority might be under this new levy authority that we're given as districts from the last legislative session, and that was about 333 million would be the result over 4 years. This is structured to be less than that in the amounts that we talked about earlier. So what we're showing here is just the difference between what that full authority potential might have been versus what this package is structured at. And that's about 5% difference, or just over $16 million over 4 years. So rationale, obviously, strong committee consensus. The areas within student well-being to continue, same with academic opportunities, organizational effectiveness, that financial stewardship being connected to that slide we just looked at. And again, just general alignment with our strategic plan. So this should look familiar. This is the version of the superintendent's recommendation that mirrors the levy committee, where it's all pieced back together. What the note below saying that these amounts are the tax rate estimates have changed based on the change of assessed value. However, the amounts above, the dollar amount, stayed the same, right? And so that gives us that stability at $3.09. And grouping the capital 2 together, this is what's going to correspond to what you see on the resolutions tonight that we crafted for you. So those are Resolution 1248 related to the EP&O, 1249 related to the capital projects, and 1250 related to transportation. And that wraps up the slide deck. If there are any questions, I can take those now.
We'll save the questions for later. I'd like to
Okay.
open it up to public comment. So first I have Mudra Mashawat, who's been waiting patiently and probably has homework that needs to be done.
Good evening. My name is Mudra Machivad and I'm a sophomore at Skyline High School. Being part of the levy committee process has been one of the most meaningful experiences I've had so far. What I enjoyed most was seeing how different voices, parents, staff, community members, and students came together to focus on what really matters for our schools. It showed me that levies aren't just about numbers, they're about people, opportunity, and the kind of school experience we want for every student. The student panel was a highlight for me because it gave me the chance to share my perspective and hear from other students across the school district. We spoke about things that directly shape our daily lives: smaller class sizes, counselors, and mental health supports, AP and STEM classes, extracurriculars, and reliable transportation. Hearing the similarities in our stories reminded me how clearly these resources connect to equity and access. This process also gave me a new appreciation for the three levies: EP&O, capital, and transportation. Each one touches daily student life in ways I haven't truly realized before, from teachers and nurses to laptops and safe buildings to buses that ensure we all can participate. I want to thank Superintendent Tao Yik for her leadership and for making space for student voices. Thank you as well to Martin Turney, Mark Sherwood, and Marcel Hauser for your guidance and support throughout this process. And finally, Robert Miller, thank you for helping me capture my reflections on video so these student insights can reach even more people. Most of all, I leave this experience proud to be a part of a district that not only invests in students, but also listens to us. I'll close with the personal motto that guides me: the heart to serve, the call to lead, and the courage to engage equals to service leadership. To me, that's what true service leadership looks like, and this levy process showed me how powerful it is when we live those values together. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, I have Catherine Kaufman. Is she still in the room, or she probably had to go after? Oh, you are here. Great. Thank you.
I wouldn't miss it. Hi, Catherine Coffin, principal at Beaver Lake Middle School. I'm sharing from the perspective of a staff member that was able to collaborate with the greater community as part of the advisory committee. As mentioned, the committee was teachers, administrators, students, parents, and community members filling this room. There was great energy every time we came in. People were excited. I really appreciated how the process allowed us for a lot of reflection with each other before providing feedback or input. I've been a part of this district as an employee for 22 years and then a student before that. This was one of the first committees I was a part of that it didn't feel like a dump truck of information was dumped on us and then we had to figure out what the answers were. It was given in edible pieces and then we could discuss, and there was an opportunity for anonymous feedback, which I think was really important. And then every meeting following addressed the questions that we had from before. My favorite part was the students. The panel was mentioned a couple of times. There were, if you picture the room, there was a healthy representation of students that were a part of the committee itself, not just a panel giving voices, but were able to give feedback regularly. And then I also was struck by how many community members that had students in the district before and were still deeply invested in the district, were a part of every week as well, sharing their perspective from that part of the community. I have a deep sense of gratitude for the thoughtful, transparent process and the strong and well-resourced that we want to have for every student. And again, I just can't emphasize enough how transparent I felt it was, which was a refreshing part for me. So thank you for the board and for your time and care and attention you give this work.
Thank you. And then Durana Ussel.
Good evening, members of the board, student representatives, and Superintendent Tauyek. I'm Durana Uzzle, the IEA president, a parent of a student at Issaquah High, and a committee member. I am here to offer a sincere appreciation for the Levy Committee and all those who worked on the committee materials. I want to share my opinion about how effective the approach was to this critical process. This was not just a work group, it was a deeply collaborative effort by all committee members that resulted in a truly representative and strong proposal for the board to consider. From the start, the district and committee members set a high standard of engagement. Many committee members prioritized outreach, ensuring that all voices were heard, and brought those insights to each of our meetings. This allowed us to gather a comprehensive perspective on what the district truly needs. There were also some realizations that the state doesn't fund some of our basic needs, like our substitutes. How does this directly improve the experience and outcomes for our students? It was a question that I and others had as a centered part of the conversations around ways to improve and enrich students' experiences at our schools. Even hearing from our very own students brought a better perspective to why the committee was dedicated to getting the right recommendation for our superintendent. I don't know what you will decide on the package that's put forth you, but I want you to know the committee's work was thorough, thoughtful, and transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other public comment regarding the levy at this time? That would be if you were a student rep on the committee. Milo?
feel like that normally goes during like your discussion time, but yes, sure, absolutely. So I was a student rep who came to the like levy student panel, and first of all, it was amazing. The other students who showed up, I was so impressed. We definitely have some future student reps on our hands. But I thought it was amazing. I really, really appreciated the questions that were asked. A lot of them were very focused on like things that we might have not even known that we get out of the levies, like our clubs and the additional like 7-period days and whatnot. And so it was pretty insightful to have us be able to reflect on that too and be like, oh wow, yeah, I do get all of this because of the levies that we have. And so that was really amazing. And then I loved being able to share. And I think what left me pretty like what left me and soaked in my brain was at the end, one of the like panel members or one of the like levy members got up and said that we should continue to not just say the stuff to them, but to say it to all of the community, like us as students. And I think that's something that we really want to do this year, not only as student reps, but just as students in general, is that I mean, students are the ones that most people want to hear from when they're considering voting on an item. And so I think it really let us kind of take in the fact that it is our responsibility to help get these things passed because they're for us. And yeah, I just think it was an amazing experience with lots of great people. I got to see my old principals and teachers and community members. So it was good to be able to see the representation in the meeting of not just like board members.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so we will start with Krish. You got to raise your hands higher. I can't.
Sorry. I'll do better next time. I'm gonna keep this really short, but it was a great student panel. There are tons of diverse voices. I really liked how I got to show what was important to me, but more so hearing, what was important to other students. I think going in, I knew what I liked and what I want to do. But going out of it, a big takeaway was that each student values different things. And so what might seem extra to me or unnecessary is something that another student, might find vital or core to them, and that there really isn't like a one size fits all approach. And so, continuing these levies and supporting them is, essential to making sure that every student can keep and maintain the programs that they value and, hold so special to them.
Right. Thank you. Yes. Good day.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, hopping off of that, I guess I didn't really realize how much stuff that um how much stuff I appreciated about like our schools, and I guess the panel was a really good way to reflect on that and reflect just with everybody, talk about all the activities and like luxuries that we have and just how much that they build my experience in the district. And so I think it was really good for like just some self-reflection and then also just to like get my voice heard out there and everybody's voice out there.
Thank you. Okay, so I will look for a motion on resolution 1248, the replacement for the EP&O levy. Will we begin there?
Okay.
I move the board adopt resolution 1248, authorizing a 4-year 2027 through 2030 educational programs and operations levy. This proposition authorizes the district to levy the following excess taxes on all taxable property within the district to maintain current educational program funding and support the district's general fund program and daily operation expenses, teaching, classroom materials, technology, extracurricular activities, buildings, and transportation. For the collection year 2027, approximate levy rate per thousand assessed value of $1.25, levy amount $75,200,000. For 2028, a rate of $1.24, that's $78,200,000. 2029, a rate of $1.22 at $81 million. And 2030, a rate of $1.19 for $82,800,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, open it up to discussion. Director Coyne.
And are we just discussing the EP&O levy?
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right. Well, that's where I had notes. So, great. So first and foremost, I want to thank the levy community. It just reminds me again around the reason why I live in this community. I've lived in this community for over 20 years. One of the reasons that my wife and I initially bought in this community is because of our schools. And I'm so glad that our students, our staff, members of our community really took the time and put together this very thought out recommendation. And I just want to thank everyone for that too. I also just want to remind the community, I know those who participated in the levy committee know this, and I know we've talked about this several times, but the EP&O levy specifically represents 16.6% of our general fund revenue. So it's really important when we think about the importance of this particular levy. And I think it's, again, good for our community to know that. And I think, Mark, as you said, I think for all of us as we're communicating to the community the importance of these levies, that in particular is an important piece. And I think, Milo, you said it well too. Students have a lot of, we're going to be looking at our students to really help us, but it's all of us. It's parents, members of the community, because again, our schools, strong schools build strong communities build strong schools. So it's interconnected. And I think as a community, we have to remember that. And again, all of those of us that moved here because of the schools, it's really important that we continue to support our levies. So thank you again. Good work.
Director Gallagher.
So each year we have rolled back our amount essentially from what our authority is versus what we actually collect. This is two parts. One, that you see that our overall request to community is less than our legislative authority is, but the numbers that Director Taylor just read out is that going to be what we actually collect, or is it going to be where we theoretically still will collect less than that? Given our pattern over the past, at least the decade I've been here, I just need clarity on that for,
Yeah.
since we have a new gap that we've never had before.
Yep. So what it does is we are estimating what we believe we can collect. So there is a scenario where the variables that go into the calculation could work into such a way that we would collect less. And that would probably be related to enrollment.
But it goes up sufficiently over the course of the 4 years that should we be off enrollment the other direction, that we will be okay? I mean, because right up until COVID, it was always our biggest fear was 4 years out, we could be exceeding our levy authority.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure that it has that capacity as well.
Absolutely. So one of the things is when we first take this into consideration, there is new authority, right? So there's new legal authority for us. So when we considered, what should those numbers look like? It wasn't to reduce them to such a manner that we wouldn't be able to accommodate some of that new enrollment if it did come. So we are utilizing some of the new authority to say, if we were able to pick up students in the out years, we would be able to collect enough to maintain these services or these enrichment services. But we are not going to necessarily go out for the full amount that we legally could. So to answer your question, yes, I believe that we have enough in those out years that we would be able to adjust to that.
So it would just be helpful for me to, I don't expect you to give it to me at this moment, but to know like how much enrollment cushion there is in those calculations, which would be helpful. And I should have asked this earlier, but I hadn't ever had to think about it in terms of where we are coming in with a levy that's under authority and then under authority like in two ways. So this has been like new way for me to think about it. And then this is probably more for Mark or maybe you, but this is going to be an interesting one to message in that this is certainly, there's a needs thing of all the things that the state doesn't fully cover for basic education, but there's also things that are unique to Issaquah that we really want. But how are we going to message the community? Like, yes, this is a wants list because we believe this is what our students deserve from an education standpoint, but we didn't go and like say we want everything and are going to do everything. We are still measured in our wants because, we aren't requesting the full levy authority that I know some of our peer neighboring districts are doing. So have you given any thought to how that is going to be messaged, especially in the context of, I think, how we were characterized a year ago?
Yeah, thank you, Director Gallinger. The committee said that they, on the balance of tax sensitivity, but also in trying to come to this table with a conservative approach based on the enrollment numbers, potentially where we'll be in the next 4 years, but also understanding that trying to, how do we elevate the experience, and like what you guys challenged us with, how do we get innovation into a renewal? So I think part of it is going to have to elevate some of the innovations, but still showing it that we're still at an affordable levy package that is still meeting the tax sensitivity of the community. So we're going to have to sell a little above the standards and some of the options, but to say that we're still going to operate within the projected package. So I don't want to say that it's going to be easy because I think it depends on which audience member or community member we're talking to is going to want to understand the little nuances, how it might affect them more, whether it's a parent or if it's a community member who doesn't have children in the district who might be older, and how does that impact them? So I'm definitely working on it. That is the next step that we're taking from the feedback we got at the last meeting.
Yeah, because I worry like sometimes it can be so complex and they think that we're hiding something or
Yeah.
trying to like fool them, and we're actually not. We're trying to transparently say we're not asking for every dollar that we could theoretically ask. So I think that this slide, Martin, would probably be an important one to include in future annual budget reports that highlight, because I think the gap will be bigger than what that is, meaning like the variance for max authority to propose, because I think we'll end up, because of enrollment, collecting less than our even more so. So I think it'll show an even bigger gap. So I would love over the course of time for us to see how this marches out. because I think that will inform future boards for how they will approach this 4 years from now. And, this board will look very different in 4 years.
And how we turn that last bracket into more layman terms for our community to understand. Doing more with less, I think it's our goal.
Any other comments?
I'll just add on to that. I think that's actually a really good point because, I mean, if we go back to the bond, we went out to the community with a long list of what were really pressing needs. I mean, at least for our buildings and the upkeep of our buildings. And we're with this levy, obviously not going to be able to cover all of those needs, but those needs still exist. So I do think that is important messaging for sure, that if we tried to be very, conservative and responsible in what we're addressing with this, but still we can't address everything that the district needs or knows is coming down the pipe, so to speak. So just on that point, I too just want to, express my gratitude to the community, the folks that served on the committee. I served on a levy committee in 2020, I believe, 2021, and really understand the time commitment and appreciate the thoughtfulness of what appears to be a very thoughtful proposal. And also thank you to the staff, to you folks. There's a lot of preparation that went into this, running 5 weeks of presentations and discussion and programming. So thank you for that. And the input is incredibly valuable. As to the EPO stuff, I'm just going to beat the drum that Director Coyne already brought up, but we are just so absolutely dependent on this funding for these programs that these levies are going to fund, primarily because of falling state funding, creating larger and larger gaps. So I hope the community understands that, values the great work that the district is doing, the programs that we're providing, and understands that this is really, in the current environment, the best way to fill a lot of those gaps that are so important to our kids. So I think that's all I have to say about the EP&O. Oh, one last thing. Obviously recognize too that there's some innovation in here and some new programs, particularly excited about AI for education, as that is the future. So
Thank you. And I'd like to say thank you to the committee, to staff for getting all of this ready, for bringing an approach that the committee was very eager to participate in, feeling like their voice is heard. I appreciated hearing comments from committee members that felt it was very transparent and that they had a better understanding. I too feel like it wasn't like, here's what we want you to vote yes on, and now I'm going to spend 5 meetings to convince you to vote yes on it. So I do think it's really important that they felt like they had real ownership around making those decisions. I think for me, the hardest part, and I don't think it would be included in the messaging, but what I know is the reality is that the system that the legislature has built forces us to go out to a levy. They purposely do that, right? And they purposely made sure that they gave us more levy authority because they didn't want to raise taxes on their end. They wanted us to come and ask the voters. I think they were hoping because we are closer to the voters that the voters would be more likely to do that. And I do appreciate the measure at which the district is like, well, we're really going to calculate what our need is and not just ask for anything we can get. So for the public to know that we are being judicious about this. I'm still frustrated with the legislature because hidden in those dollar values is special ed that we are required to provide because it's the right thing to do. But that is not funded by the federal government, who promised they would fund 40% of it. They fund 13% of it. And it's not fully funded by the state, who keeps trying to just say, well, we'll let you include more kids. I only have so many kids. They just cost me more than you give me to be able to really help them reach their full potential. Because when we talk about all students, it includes all of them. The other thing that this is wrapped in this that we don't see is the state benefits to our teachers and our other staff members that we have to pay out of levy dollars because the state said, oh, you must use our SEB created SEB said you have to use it. Even if your spouse gets insurance benefits, the district has to pay as if you were getting those benefits, putting money into it. And it's nearly half of it has to come out of our levy dollars. So those are things that are unfunded by the state that the state requires us to do. And so when people go, well, what would happen if this didn't pass? It's not just that you would lose like all the athletics and activities, right? There's a lot of stuff that gets lost, 6-period day instead of 7. What would happen to Gibson Neck? There are some things for me that are dramatic if this doesn't pass. We have to cut even deeper because there are things that this funds that we're required to do. We don't get to cut special education in half. We don't get to cut benefits in half. So that means those cuts are even deeper. So I appreciate this, and I hope the public really understands the ramifications of this. This is 16-point-some% of our overall budget. So if it's not there, we have to make adjustments that are significant.
Yeah, and I would welcome student input and how we can communicate, how you guys can communicate and do efforts, right? You have a senior class of many of which will be 18 and can vote in February. So like that's important. I can't imagine us changing our high school from a 7-period day since we did it for acceleration and remediation and enrichment. I worry that, you know, for us, we believe that having a mental health counselor embedded in every one of our secondary schools is essential, even though the state doesn't. That we believe that having nurses available for our students everywhere is essential. And the state would say like, oh, you have 3 nurses for 20,000 students. So I just would love to have you guys think about how you can help support us in messaging this out to your peers, because I do believe that just like we listen to you a lot, we are not alone. We are representative of the parent and the adult community. That student voice is really important, and I think you all as students have a unique opportunity to leverage your voice and really share out the really important parts. And I really love that Chris talked about like, hey, just because this part of it wasn't important to me, I realized by going to that committee that there are other parts that are really important to other people. And I think that that's why having a message that comes out across the broad spectrum of students, I think would be really helpful for our community to hear.
Any other input from students? Rex?
I was just going to follow up on what board member Gallagher was saying. How would you like us to give that information out to people? Like, what do you think is the most effective way that we can leverage our voices to project what needs to be heard by the students, and not just the students, but the parents and teachers?
You guys have figured out how to leverage social media in the ways that I can barely turn my phone on. So really short sound bites that people don't have to spend a lot of time on, that get through I think the emotional message, not just the financial message, I think are really helpful, because it's like real world connection to, you know, your everyday lived experience. So I think you've heard us say it'd be 16%. Like that's like, that means it touches about every part of your school day. So it's hard for us to be like, oh, like this is levy funded, this is levy funded, this is levy funded. It'd be easier for you to say like, hey, these couple things are, but it's throughout your whole day. And I think that's the part where we've grown so accustomed to it that sometimes we have gotten lackadaisical in how deep and broad the investments are that this community has made. And, you know, I remember back in 2018 when we first made these investments in the high school day, it was a really significant community conversation that we had, and a lot of them. And I think that what we learned from a year ago is that we don't want to take for granted any part of what the community may need to be inspired to remember. But also, it's easy for us to forget that in 6-7 years, half of our student body has literally turned over because they've gone through and graduated from our system, and a whole bunch of new families are here. And so like, it's how do we continue to renew the message of the importance and value of the Issaquah education? And that's how you can help us, because you have shared with us what rises to the top and it's important to you that we, at least I, don't always have awareness of.
Ava and then Director Coyne.
Just something I was thinking about on the topic of how we as students can better convey information regarding the levy to our peers. I think when we were using social media to do things like the day in the life videos for the bond, those ended up having an enormous amount of reach. And social media is a great platform in that way, but we also tend to prioritize communication that comes directly from the district. And in my experience, students who aren't necessarily already very invested in district affairs have a hard time seeking out and gaining that information. So just something to throw out as student reps is doing things like working with ASB within our schools and those channels that students who may not be necessarily invested in things like levy funding are already going to check and already going to have access to. There's so many like daily communication channels within our schools, whether that be things like iLink or not iLinks, that's PCMS, but morning news or daily announcements where all of this information is pushed out to students on everything from colleges to like social and emotional well-being. And I feel like we as student reps can definitely talk to our administrators at our schools to kind of build in district information into those spaces.
Okay, great.
Director Coyne.
I think these are all really great ideas, and I'm glad you're all asking how you can help. And so I'm going to give everybody a little bit of an assignment for all of our student reps where I want you to start, and it's late tonight, so this probably won't happen tonight. But I would love for you to take this presentation home and talk to your parents about it, because we want to make sure students know about the importance of this. But if we're not going back and telling parents who have the ability to vote, that's where I think there's a bit of a disconnect. And I think we had, and I want to thank all of our students who helped us last year with our bond efforts, but I think that there may have been a disconnect with some of that information getting home. So I think it's good for students, and please continue to talk amongst yourselves about it, but encourage students to talk to their parents, because it's their parents who have the ability to vote. So that's really important. And you can all help us by starting with bringing this presentation home, sharing it with your parents, and even more importantly, coming back to us with questions that they have or even concerns. And we can talk through that. So thank you again for offering to help us.
Anything else?
Would you mind if I just give them one
Sure.
additional point? In addition to obviously doing in your school and maybe talking about voter registration opportunities for students who are becoming 18, there's two sides of this coin. There's what the district can do and you can do as student reps. We can tell facts, but there are volunteer groups here in Issaquah. You can do, there's more activity that can occur with those groups that go a little above and beyond what we're able to do as a district. And I know many members of our school board are very familiar with our volunteer groups here in Issaquah.
Yes, the district is just the facts. Anything else? We have a motion, so Director Callinger.
I guess I wonder, like, I know it's important for us to move forward because we need longer time to message out to our communities. I wonder just about how the committee was broad-based and representative, but how much reaching out have we about these packages to our community, our schools community? Because I thought we were going to try and do that before we actually took up for a resolution vote.
Were you talking in having more of like an open comment period? Yeah. So certainly upon the request to making sure that more than just the committee members knew how to reach the board, either in public comments or through email, or even emailing the committee. We did share that in our bulletins and some of our messaging over the past 2 weeks. So we could actually use that information if we would receive it. So if it was direct email to you, I wasn't obviously privy to an email to a board member.
So did you get public comment over the past?
I wouldn't say we got a ton. I'd have to go take a look, but it wasn't an enormous amount.
I believe at the last meeting, we talked about reminding people of 3 ways to give comment, knowing that this would be on the agenda for tonight. One was to email or come in person to the school board meeting or to email the school board directly. The second was or the third actually was then to email the levy inbox as well. So come in person for public comment, email the school board directly, or the alias for the levy information.
Correct.
Questions. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look through all the newsletters for the district that I receive. And so I see it today. I'm just trying to look through last week.
I can find it. I can send it to you.
So, well, we do have a motion on the floor. Is this something that you would want to table for a later time?
I just want to look through the email to see that it went out last week.
Okay.
Because I think for me, if it just went out today in the newsletters, then I would want there to be more time. So I'm looking.
And Director Gallinger, you're looking for what specifically an announcement? Because I did see a series of updates. I see one on the September 8th ISD bulletin. The Levy Advisory Committee begins meeting. Are you looking for something more specific in terms of the package?
No, I was just looking for, it was in October 2nd. The newsletters that all went out to the whole school, each individual school's community who sign up for that, as well as today. So that's just what I was wanting, that so our communities had 2 opportunities to hear it, like was saying most recently, and respond, come, do whatever. So I just didn't want to be where it was, hey, we moved to community recommendation and then now here we go. So I needed that reassurance that I can see that came into inboxes. And we can't make people come in, provide input, but I do want to make sure that they've had ample opportunity. And if they say like, well, I didn't even know about it, I want to be able to point to like, hey, on this date, on this date, and on this date. So I am reassured now, but I wanted to.
Yeah, eyes on it.
And I'm just going to reiterate too, I'm looking at the ISD bulletins too. So it started on September 8th, and then every single one of the weekly bulletins had a recap of the levy committee too, meetings as well.
And I understand that concern. I'll just say out there on the interwebs watching a taxing authority they were planning on raising a tax, and public input was like, but you didn't involve the community at all in the discussion. So I do feel like between the levy, the report outs to the community through our e-news, and I think part of the work of the levy committee is to go out to their sectors and discuss that as well, the communities that they have. I feel that there's been adequate opportunities for the public to comment. And so that's my opinion. So again, I'll say there is a motion on the floor. Is everybody prepared for their vote? Then I'll ask all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We will go on now to resolution 1249, replacement capital project levies. So if I can have a motion.
Patience, this is a long one. Here we go. I move the board adopt resolution 1249, authorizing levies for technology, critical repairs, improvements. This levy funds for critical facility repairs, improvements, replacements, technology for technology improvements, equipment, staffing, and professional development needed to support district-wide technology systems and services, and to integrate technology into teaching and learning to meet the current and future educational programs for its students and updating for safety, security, and efficiency, and authorizes the following excess levies on all taxable property within the district. In collection year 2027, the approximate levy rate per $1,000 of assessed value of 65 cents and levy amount of $39,169,000. 2028, a rate at 60 cents per thousand, $37,806,000. In 2029, the levy rate of 59 cents per thousand for a total of 39,341,000. In 2030, a levy rate of 59 cents per thousand at a $41,194,000.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Open it up for discussion. Director Taylor.
I think my comment about AI is more appropriate here.
Perfect.
That was off.
Any other discussion? Director Gallinger.
So this one has a total package for the critical repairs of $55 million. Can you remind me what that total number was in 2021?
Let's see, 2022 would have been around 53 million, I believe. Or for the non-technology portion of that levy.
Yeah, I want the non-technology part of that.
And
I'm
I'm going to ask if Mariah can look that up, but I'm trying off the top of my head I believe it was 53 million.
He's taking the phone a friend option, as I
Yes.
recall. While he's looking that up, are there any other comments?
I'm sorry, I missed the question. Can we just repeat what we're looking for?
I'm looking for the total amount that our critical repairs levy was, which I think I found it from 2022. So it looks like it was about 50, 53 to 54. I guess I can do the math. I mean, it's 4 numbers for me add up. Because what I'm trying to then ask and follow up with is, of that part, I know 44 million of that was dedicated towards the new high school.
Correct.
So I'm trying to get a sense on what was the non-high school part of that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't zero, but
no, it was about $8 or $9 million. That's what I'm trying to remember.
And why I'm asking that is because what we heard in reflection of the bond not passing was, to the community, those critical repair needs, especially like safety and security and whatnot, were gonna come through then as a critical repair levy, because it's still essential things. So I'm trying to get a sense on how much it went from then till now. And so if you said it was minus 44, so it's 53,800,000 was what I have in my notes. And so if we take away the 44, $9.8 million is what we spent for the critical repairs, like roof replacement, security upgrades, whatnot. And now we're asking for 55 million. So that's a lot more. Sounds right. And still not even probably getting halfway through our list of the critical needs that the district outlined in the bond. So it's really to say, like, this is just the beginning.
Right.
This is not the end. And this is, when we had $600 million worth of needs, this is just a start.
Correct.
And that's what I was trying to get a sense of
Sure.
like.
So we looked it up. It was 9.8 million. And so, yes, the increase is substantial. And one of the reasons, and is that the bond covered a longer time horizon. So the first exercise was to go through and say, okay, what needs to fit into a 4-year look and the most critical items. So that's one reason why the bond package would have had a much larger number. Obviously, some of those other things that we needed to prioritize, we did, right? So we also included staff input when we surveyed. So we made sure that we were up to date, not just relying on the information from the facility assessments.
So then my follow-up question, and this is what I asked 4 years ago, is it enough to get the projects done as listed? Like, what I didn't see is any sort of contingency funding to complete these projects. And obviously it's a levy, not a bond, so you can just change the list potentially. But I guess I want some assurance that there is enough conservative planning that the projects as outlined, like for instance, like a roof repairs or replacement is a big project, that we're really confident that the projects that we have outlined, we can actually complete with the dollars that we are requesting. Is what
Yes.
I'm really wanting.
Yeah. So I can expand it. So putting together the project list, the contingency and a conservative contingency was part of that idea, right? To make sure that we wanted to make sure that we can commit to that. But the other thing I will say is that as we know, things can change and things can change pretty rapidly over a 4-year period. And so we had runaway inflation and some things that have happened to us in the last 4 years that are hard to plan for. Right. And so they can outpace even our conservative projections. So that's why one thing we want to make sure that we do is prioritize that list and make sure that we tackle that list by the most important things first. So if we do need to come to you for an adjustment, that we are taking care of those things that really need to be taken care of first, and that we can mitigate the impact of any increase in costs that we couldn't anticipate.
By the way, thank you to our students. It is getting late, so many of them have homework still left to do, so thank you. Any other comments? I think for me, the important thing that I always talk about with this levy is that the state funds zero technology. They don't pay for any computers that we have, literally even in the buildings that our staff use, the network connections we have. Anything that is technology related is not funded by the state, and it's funded through this EP&O. So even for us to maintain the licenses we have for electronic textbooks that we have, the licenses for the programs we have, all of that comes through this levy as well. And that is really critical. Not only that, we have to start actually preparing our students for a 21st century that is already here and has gone way beyond where we anticipated back in 1999 when we started talking about 21st century skills. We couldn't even begin to think about what we need to give students. And so that's also included in this levy. And I think when we look at how AI will impact education over the next 4 years, we have to be prepared with our technology. And that's what this helps us do. Director Taylor.
And not just our technology, but the training of our staff to use that technology and understand it and help our students understand how to use that technology.
Anything else from the board? Superintendent, any comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. We'll move on to the final, the final resolution 1250 for the school bus levy.
Excuse me. I move the board adopt resolution 1250 authorizing a levy for school buses and electric charging infrastructure. This levy funds new replacement school buses and electric charging infrastructure to sustain safe, reliable, and sustainable transportation, and authorizes the following excess levy on all taxable property within the district for collection year 2027. Approximate levy rate per $1,000 of assessed value of 3 cents and a levy amount of $2 million.
Thank you.
Second.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I almost missed that part. Any comments?
For the 4 people who voted no, can you tell me about, did you have any sense on what the hesitation was?
No, I don't think we heard specifically in the comments, the comment mentee that we did, or even on the floor. I think there was probably just some, well, I mean, actually, initially we did hear a little bit about some potential hesitancy around electric buses. So is it the right time? Is this what we should be doing? We also heard quite a bit of the other perspective, that this is a pretty reasonable step into where, we can continue to pilot and utilize electric buses while keeping our fleet where it needs to be. So that's probably as much as I can remember of any feedback in terms of the no votes. Yeah.
Director Taylor.
Also a follow up on that. Do I remember right? There was a discussion in the committee about not wanting to pilot the electric buses solely on the plateau, but across the district. Can you tell me just a little bit what the discussion was or what the hesitancy was from using a limited geography?
Yeah. So we had so we already have a charging infrastructure in place. So we finally got that going. We have capacity to expand it, and we have our first 3 buses. So the logic was initially, well, let's utilize what we have and expand to the number of charging. I don't know what station. Yes, each connector or whatever. So technically I'm going to stumble over this, but so to us, this was the next step, right? So let's flesh it out up there. Let's utilize it. Let's do it up on a more of a flat plane to kind of test it out. Well, the committee said, that sounds great for the most part, except, it really doesn't feel like we're considering everyone around the district, right? So this is one of those areas that, hey, there's 2/3 of the district that's not going to be part of this test, that we think that would be a good thing if we were all included. And so we took that feedback and said, okay, how could we adjust? And so the only other place we can do this is the main facility off of Second. So we adjusted by reducing 2 electric buses, and that's quite a bit of money when you do that, right? So that freed up enough that we could explore getting that infrastructure input at the main facility. If we do it at the main facility, that's where all of our buses throughout the rest of the district go. So we could start a smaller scale at the main facility as well as the plateau, and then everyone feels included in this piloting the electric buses. I think that was the feel.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. So that was great work on the part of the levy committee. Superintendent, thank you for passing along your recommendation, and thank you to the board for your questions, your thoroughness throughout this process, asking questions and getting the answers that you need to put before the public. We will move on now to our next agenda item, monitoring report for operational expectation 2, OE2 treatment of people. So I will begin with a motion.
I move the board accept the monitoring report for operational expectation 2, treatment of people, OE2, as presented.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Great. We'll move that to staff.
Great, thank you. So I do want to recognize that we did have a student representative prepare a report, which the board has received in advance of this meeting. Unfortunately, since it's past 9 15 p.m., our board representatives did leave, depart the building. And I know that she was hoping to be here for a short presentation, but I think that her report does suffice. But before I pass it off to Jacqueline Downey and Donna Hood, I do want to thank Jacqueline for stepping in to lead the review and monitoring of OE2 treatment of people in partnership with Donna Hood on my behalf, especially because she started after the year we're monitoring. So, going back and monitoring the year that which you were not here is always a fun task. But more importantly, it's a good opportunity to also learn about the work in the prior year. Our focus on supporting staff learning and development has been crucial as we think about this particular operational expectation, because it is about also sustaining and growing our practices to be able to serve all of our learners in our classrooms through Tier 1 and core instruction. I am excited to get new data from the Healthy Youth Survey this year that we can use as we move into the next couple of years, because I do think that I expect that data to move and change, and I want to know what that is. I think waiting 2 years sometimes feels a little bit delayed for me in terms of having a stronger pulse on how our kids are doing, what they're feeling, and what they're thinking. And I know that as we think about survey completion, we did see some much improved rates in our soft skills survey completion over the prior year, and that helps us also generate that kind of data set that we need, especially in the year that we didn't have the Healthy Youth Survey being administered. So we did get some higher rates, and that was something that we had noted in last year's monitoring report was a bit of a take it with a grain of salt given the low completion rates. But that higher rate of completion was for the middle and high school specifically. So we do look forward to continuing to update our survey methods overall and our questions as we prepare for this upcoming year and coming out of this board review and discussion. So over to you, Jacqueline Downey.
Thank you, Superintendent, and good evening, directors. Jacqueline Downey, Assistant Superintendent. Tonight, I'm providing a brief overview of the 2024-25 Operational Expectation 2 Treatment of People report. As I coordinated this report about last year's data and achievements, it was a wonderful opportunity for me to learn about this foundational work in our district. This report reflects how the district ensures that students, staff, families, and community members are treated with dignity, respect, and courtesy, and that our schools remain safe, welcoming, and supportive learning environments. Overall, the district is in compliance with OE2, with one exception related to monitoring and controlling student access to electronically distributed information due to a data breach last spring. The breach involved a single student accessing a staff document with student information. It was quickly contained, and all affected families were notified per state law. Across the district, multiple data sources show that students report strong feelings of safety, belonging, and respect with positive trends over time. Elementary students report high levels of emotional support and safety. About 80% or more say they feel safe at school and believe adults care about them. Middle school students show steady growth in feeling respected and emotionally supported, though bathrooms and hallways remain areas of need. High school students report strong academic expectations and relationships. Over 80% feel they belong, and 9 out of 10 say teachers expect their best effort. We continue to strive for all students reporting positive feelings of safety and belonging at school. We believe our work with social emotional learning, universal design for learning, comprehensive counseling programs, and additional supports will continue to aid in this progress. This report also highlights robust family engagement systems, including PTSA collaboration, family partnership advisory group, multilingual outreach events, and parent advisory structures that ensure two-way communication and inclusion in district operational and educational decision-making. Finally, the report outlines our process for complaints, appeals, and anti-discrimination protections. In summary, the report affirms a culture across our schools that values relationships, belonging, and safety, while continuing to strengthen transparency, digital security, and family partnership. So I turn it over to you all for questions.
So I open it to questions. Director Coyne.
Thank you for presenting this information. I have a question on page 13 of the report. One question that I always find interesting, and in this monitoring report specifically, I always go to the question around a staff member took a genuine interest in me and personally helped me to be successful through my high school years. And it's great to see that those numbers continue to look strong. Because I think that's very important, obviously, to have that for students to have that connection. I guess my question though is when I look at that, I look at we had strong participation at Skyline and Gibson Eck, and I think okay participation at Liberty, but it's quite low at Issaquah. Do you have any sense? And obviously throughout the exit survey, I look at the other questions too. Do you have a sense of why that is so much lower?
Specifically why, I am not sure, but we did identify that right away when we reviewed the survey results. So Executive Director Sherry Cox and I and leadership at Issaquah are learning from their peers at Skyline and Liberty, the processes that they use to ensure completion. So we are looking at how to strengthen that and noted that low number.
That'd be great. Yeah, because I look at it for Issaquah High and it being less than 100, and at Skyline it's 474. So it's almost as if like every senior who graduated, had completed that. So yeah, I'd be curious to know why that dip took place. But thank you for researching that. That was my question.
Director Taylor.
Quick question, staying on page 13. High school soft skills survey, places I feel most safe at school. There's 18,000 responses. Can you explain that to me? We have 6,000 high school students.
Yes, I can. So there are most of the questions on these surveys. It's just number of respondents. This is actually one where it's number of responses. And the way the question was worded is that there were about 10 different locations and students could select as many of those locations as they wanted. So overall, there were 18,000 locations selected.
I thought we had to annex 6 more high schools, so I wasn't sure. Okay. I'll just make one other comment, but it's about the report on the whole as I was reading it. And it's really kind of reflective on my time on the board here that I just really think the district has done a great job using the words that you just used, valuing relationships in our community. I look at all of these various programs, family partnership, the special education group, student advisory, community advisory, literary, this was new to me, the literary continuum committee, highly capable advisory, budget and capital projects, all of these opportunities for our community to engage with our district, our programs, the direction that the district is going in, and transparency as to how we're financing and budgeting. I just think it's really exemplary, and it's been a real growth in this area. So it really struck me in the report, and I just really wanted to give kudos to the district for all of this work, because it just, the whole report is really comes across with that engagement. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think
Director
my
Gallagher.
initial observations are, so can you share with us why our elementary students don't feel safe in the office?
Can you
Oh,
point me to the page?
6, I think it was like 6.
6.
I just thought it was weird, both 4th and 5th grade. I was like, that seems like a weird thing. Like, was it an understanding of the question as a 4th grader, or they were to go to the office or getting in trouble? I was
The office is a scary place for younger children.
Yeah, I-
Yes, in general, but
okay. I thought that was weird.
Although it is declining, so that's good. It's not as scary as it was last year, apparently.
So then to the top of page 10, if you would go to that one.
Yes.
That is a question that I do think the trend is concerning to me. And so, a year ago, it was said, well, it wasn't representative because we had so few participating. I'm like, okay. But this one is where we have the same exact amount and it's the same number essentially. So that is a pretty notable decline about a sense of belonging. And I know that has been a focus of our strategic plan, was belonging. So at least if we take students at their word for perception data, and perception data is perception data, like I'm curious about what the thoughts are about it and what is going to be done to help mitigate this, because it has been sort of a core part about what we cared about and we're passionate about. So
I noticed this data as well, and was curious about it, and remain curious. And I think it's one we need to explore further, to find out what is underneath that trend, from 22, 23 to 24, 25. I think there are some gains with middle school in other ways about being acknowledged and respected for their background, which you think would relate to sense of belonging. So it does make me want to inquire further, and partner, with executive director and principals to really find out what students mean by that, by the sense of belonging decline on the survey.
Well, I think you'll also see a decline, a 10-point decline over the past 2 years in, I feel at least one staff member takes a genuine interest in me.
Yes.
If I don't feel like a staff member is taking an interest in me, I'm going to feel less connected.
Yeah, I just think that of all the things that we really focused on in the strategic plan, like belonging is a really important one, especially at that age and stage. So I just don't want that to be overlooked, because this board, especially, we talk a lot about academic data. And I, for one, am super passionate about academic data, but also passionate about students feeling like middle school is a space and place for them to thrive. And this doesn't mean that something's wrong, but I would love for us to explore more about, and I'd love to hear more in the springtime about what you guys find. So I just don't want this to get lost. Maybe if you're taking notes on the little thing for the treatment of people form, that we can capture this.
Thank you.
Dr. Klein.
And I think back to that point too, just to tack onto it, it surprises me too when I see that, because I really believe our middle schools do a really good job around belonging. I've always felt that, I mean, I know for my own particular students, I think that actually uniquely was when they felt the greatest sense of belonging was in that middle school, which is unique. I don't think most of us who went through middle school years ago felt like that, but I think our district does a really good job in that area. So I am surprised to see that trend and it going down. So thank you for researching that further.
And that's why maybe the first step is, if you have the disaggregation for the 22, 23 versus the 2024 by the 6 middle schools, that may be the first place you
Exactly. That was my thought too. Yeah,
we
can see that.
There may be where, like, oh, it's stable at 3 of our buildings and not stable at 3 of our buildings. Then it's ability for you to focus your very limited time that you have.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I think some data that jumped out at me, because it was at every single level, was the number of students who felt that they could share their opinion was only about 2/3. So we have a third of students who do not feel they can share their opinions in class. Now, some students have said that's because they're worried about other students. That, at least that's a high schooler. So like, well, I'm concerned that other students are going to attack me. But when it's down in 4th and 5th grade, and it's across the board and it's consistent, it never reaches above 71%. And that's at the high school. So they feel most confident at the high school. It's in the 60s in middle and elementary. How am I going to feel connected to a school if I feel like I can't share my opinion? And I think it's something that has really concerned me over the past couple of years as we talk about how do we have discord and how do we talk to each other even though we may not agree. And we're telling students, regardless of what it's about, that they can't share their opinion because I don't want to be rejected. And so I have a big concern as I leave this board. That is probably one of my concerns, is that we are stifling student voice, even amongst themselves. We're not teaching students that it's okay to disagree and how to disagree agreeably. And maybe it's because the adults in our society aren't doing it well, that it's not being modeled for them. And so how do we reverse course? And we're going to have to start with this newest generation of reversing course on discourse.
Thank you.
Another one. I just came with that one off the top of my head. Any other comments, Superintendent? Reflections?
I appreciate the data points that you brought forward. We actually talked about that today, in preparation for tonight. So helpful to see that we're sort of seeing some of the data points popping that are areas of interest, further inquiry, and some follow-up. So we appreciate the alignment there, and we will certainly go further with that. And thank you to Jacqueline and Donna, but the whole team that contributed to this, that's also in this room.
I think that 2.2 could be strengthened by having like parents, like how do we figure out how parents really feel about if they feel welcomed? Because I know in our elementary schools, parents feel very welcomed. And by the time they get to high school, less so. And it's the opposite of where developmentally they need parent support the most, even though they don't want it. But I think as parents, at least now of a parent of 2 high schoolers, I feel much more at a loss for how I can engage and support my student like directly, whereas you could when you have a kindergartner. So for me, like just listening at all the different like parent groups wasn't really sufficient or scratching the itch. And I think knowing more about the lived parent experience would be, I think, helpful to know. And I don't know if that's through focus groups. I don't know if that's through survey, but because then once you know what the barriers are, then you can offer like a menu of options for how those barriers can be overcome to parents. And the way that you're approaching and your Friday update was talking about how, hey, we're talking about the anxious generation and we're going to do this intentional reach out in partnership with PTSAs to equip parents for XYZ. So I think in the same way, it would be really helpful if our parents could feel like, hey, these are the things that I could do, because then you've already socialized it to the staff and administration. So then they know like so for all swimming in the same direction, all have the same language and the same menu. I think it may give the opportunity to increase parent engagement in ways that are not intrusive to our staff and also welcomed by our students.
I agree that parent perception data would be helpful feedback.
I'll just second that. I wrote that down in my notes as well as to whether we had any survey or data reflecting how our families felt about engagement. So.
Right. Anything else? This was a very meaty report. Great. Seeing no other comments. Oh, by the way, I didn't ask if there was public comment online, but I'm supposing that there's none. There's no public here. Okay. Yes.
The one thing I would do is because I thought that Milo's report was really good, but one of the things that came through, so it was 2.4 about Spanish. So tell us about Spanish, because something obviously came up, and I would love to know, is that a blip? Is this like a long-term change in the direction for Gibson Eck?
Sure.
But I think it was hopefully recognized that, again, perception, that the communication was lacking. So do you want to go to 2.4 and say that would be something that clearly came up?
Yes, absolutely. And I had the opportunity to speak with Milo on the board prep call, who shared, and I had read the report as well. She shared about the concern. To summarize for those who haven't had the chance to read it, since Milo didn't get to speak, that in her focus groups with students and on surveys, some students expressed frustration and concern that Spanish used to be offered as a class at Gibson Eck, and that went away with a staffing change, and that some students felt that the communication around that wasn't very clear to students or families. And so we talked about how to utilize that information to partner with school leadership and her advisor. And I looked into it as well. And ultimately, in terms of program, Gibson Eck is designed to have the advisor-led experiential learning take on education. And so the Spanish class emerged sort of as a bonus, if you will, that there was an advisor who had the Spanish skills and an endorsement and was able to offer that. But prior to that staff member being on staff, students would need to pursue Running Start or online, like some other courses not available at Gibson Eck. So when that staff member moved on, Spanish was no longer offered, kind of back to the original model prior to that staff member working at the school. So that is the why. I still note, though, the concern in communication about the change. And so that's something that we are looking into and supporting the school with.
Just because I no longer know the process. When my daughter was at Gibson Neck, it had to be Rosetta Stone was how they learned Spanish. So I am wondering, is that what we're back to, or is there opportunity for us because we have an online school now that we have an online offering of Spanish and that's what they would take, or whatever language, various languages? Because I think that is going to be the biggest barrier for students that are trying to reach those requirements for post-secondary. If they're going into a program that requires 2 years of world language, that's going to be difficult for them to obtain. And so then that limits their ability for higher ed. So wondering about better solutions than Rosetta Stone. For my daughter, she's going into a program and hopefully a place where she doesn't need that world language.
Yes, my understanding is currently it's online classes through our online program and running START.
Anything else?
Nope, I just want to bring forward what I thought she would say first.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Well, seeing no other discussion, we will call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm hoping my board colleagues are not looking at the minute markers on these items because we're a little bit over. The next item on the agenda is legislative matters.
I'll be quick, but one update. I was able to participate this week in a planning session for the town hall that is being put together similar to last year's event, which will be inviting legislators from all over the east side to participate in kind of a listening session, but then also an opportunity to answer questions regarding school funding. Shannon Mayo from the PTSA Council was also on that call, as was Dorana Uzzle. So we've had some good participation. I'm encouraged by this year's planning. Seems to be a little bit more succinct, a little bit tighter agenda, and the hope to maybe shift thematically from conversations about the big 3, transportation, MSOCs, and special education funding, and maybe starting to engage our legislators on a larger conversation about the problems with the funding model in Washington, which I think is that's going to be a long journey, but to start having that conversation now, to try to bring forward some real examples to our legislators as to how the funding model is failing, I think could be a good approach. So I will keep all of you informed as to that planning. 2 things. It will be January 7th for sure, will be the date for that. That's about the only date before the legislators go into session that is also after the holidays, so we don't get caught up in that. So that I know, and perhaps I can talk to the superintendent and staff because they are looking for a location. And maybe one of our high school auditoriums might suffice, but last year they had almost 600 people.
Yeah.
So anyway, I will follow up with you on that.
We've been looking around. There's a lot of activities,
Oh, okay.
but I think the goal is to have it by an easy on off from 90, but I know that the goal was to rotate through different districts and not be in the same district since so many of us are involved. So we're hoping we can make it work, but it might not be exactly off 90.
I think they will take what they can get.
Okay, great. We will continue to, some of us might be on it looking like Martin Turney already.
I will say I do like the perspective of looking at the overall funding model. I think being able to be clear to say thank you for anything that has been done. I think a lot of times they try to make movements where they can, and then we go, that's not good enough. So I think being really clear about that and being clear about we're talking about a funding model that most of them were not here when it was developed.
Very good point.
So that it's not a blaming them,
Yeah.
but a recognition and can we fix this?
Yeah. That's a great point. Great point.
For me, legislative matters, because it deals with voting, you all should have received an email from WASDA regarding the State Board of Education votes. This would be online voting, that you might have gotten from a candidate. But so it's not only it's the WASDA officers and other positions like resolutions, nominating, et cetera, legislative committee, but also the State Board of Education and the Puget Sound ESD. So all of those are linked with that. So I don't remember when the close date is. Probably a good president would have known that. And a good WASDA board member might have known that. But I do know that it opened October 1st. You should have gotten your ballot already. And it's a link that you just click on and then do your voting. It's all on one page. Once you're done, you submit it and you're done. Any other legislative matters? Because I'm sure that the federal government being shut down is not really impacting us.
I have nothing else to report.
Okay. We go to announcements and correspondence. Are there any additional announcements and correspondence from those on it? Yes.
I had one thing really quick, and I'm sorry, I know we're late, but I just wanted to make a call out for the new Homeroom Huddle podcast. I caught up on it this past weekend. It's excellent, and encourage folks to listen in. There's one on CTE and one on kindergarten. So great program. Follow it and it'll be in your podcast feed.
Right. Any others? Hearing none, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is calendar and future agenda topics. So, one of the things we need to look at, can you believe we are already at the time of the 2026 WASO, WASDA, WASBO Legislative Conference on January 9th and 10th at the Hilton Seattle Airport. I believe we'll have at least a quorum there, so we do need to have a motion so we can take action on that.
I move the board attend the 2026 WASBO Legislative Conference in Seattle on January 9th and 10th, 2026.
I second.
Oh,
Any other discussions on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next on there is the NSBA Advocacy and Equity Institute is February 1st through 3rd. Registrations are open. If somebody would like to attend that or two, I know in the past we've had two. So I see Director Gallinger and Director Taylor.
I believe I would like to go.
So it's February 1st through 3rd, so it's a little bit later than before. I will also be there, but it won't be a quorum because I won't be a board member.
Then we can go to it.
Yes. So because there's not a quorum, no action is necessary. The last thing is we do need to schedule an executive session. We were not able to hold it today regarding legal matters. We tried to see if we could get together tomorrow, but I am out of town and Director Mullings isn't here.
I'm out of town.
And you're out of town. So we're needing to look at for 30 minutes sometime in the next week. So either the 15th or the 16th, Wednesday or Thursday of next week. I gotta get my own.
I'm sorry, this will be online. We'll be doing this online. Yeah.
We can do it by Zoom. Yes.
You said the 15th or 16th.
Yes, for 30 minutes.
I think I can make those days work.
It just depends on the time.
And are we looking during the day or I'm not available either of those evenings?
Well, we have our town hall.
We have a
on the
town hall if we
16th.
had to do before that, but that would not be fun.
I can do during the day on the 15th or 16th.
It'll be tough for me to do the 15th. The 16th I can do.
16th is better for me too.
Okay.
Yeah, 16th morning in particular is wide open.
Yeah, me too. If we could do.
So it sounds like you should just schedule the 16th because then you'll have quorum.
Yeah, you have
And
a
then if
quorum.
you can go, great, but I would take what you
If
can.
not, yeah.
Could be good.
Would 9 o'clock
That'd work for me.
or earlier or later?
9 or 9:30 would be fine. I'm commuting. I'm usually into the office by 9. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to make it 9:30 just in case?
Yes.
Let's make it 9:30.
So I need to make a motion.
Yes,
I
please.
move that we set a executive session for Thursday, October 16th, starting at 9:30 for approximately 30 minutes.
Second.
Any other just additional comments? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Are there any other items for calendaring or future agenda topics that you would like to jot down or make me note? Dr. Gallinger, future agenda topic?
Yes, where are we going to fit in adding the word equitable into the OE 14 language? How are we going to process that? I don't think it's a structural difference that requires a lot more work, but I do want to figure out how we're going to sequence that for first read, second read, etc.
We could do first read at the next meeting and second read at the November 11th meeting.
Okay.
Or November, whatever date that is.
Since
13th.
you've been part of
13th.
this, I would ideally like to get this sequence and done while you're still with us.
Yes.
Yep, I tentatively put on my agenda for the agenda to propose that for the next meeting as a first read and a second read potentially for November. So that lines up well, and that's the direction I needed.
Perfect. And then the second thing is I've heard enough questions about this, not to the level of middle school boys soccer, but to a level of why we can't have pets in our schools. Pets. Animals come in like to do like reading with Rover or things like that because they occur in Lake Washington. So again, in Sammamish, when like things that occur in Lake Washington school district, elementary schools that don't get to encourage in Issaquah schools, elementary schools, whenever there's gaps, that means there's questions. So I would love to hear sort of, is that up for discussion? Could it be up for discussion, et cetera, et cetera. So I bring it up here because I don't know where else I'd bring it up.
Yeah, I'll be happy to bring something forward in the next couple weeks. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to see a change to that policy. I think it was changed initially out of a reaction to a specific person. And so to open that back up to our community would be very helpful. Anything else? Anything for the good of the order? Having completed our agenda, we are adjourned.